Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Cynthia George. On an afternoon on June 16, 2001, an attack at a gas station in Akron, Ohio, shattered the peaceful atmosphere and claimed the life of a successful businessman once admired by the upper class. Ed George and Cynthia George were famous residents and were considered the wealthiest in the state of Ohio, USA. Ed was a successful Lebanese businessman who owned a banquet hall and a nightclub. He was one of 8 children in a Lebanese Catholic family. After completing his education at the University of Michigan, he joined the family business founded by his father, Edwin George, in 1948. Although the original building was destroyed by fire, Ed rebuilt it and expanded the venue to include an entertainment center for events. During its peak, the establishment hosted renowned musical acts. Cynthia George, Ed's wife, was a charming and attractive socialite, known for her petite frame, blonde hair, and striking blue eyes. They had 7 children together. Cynthia grew up in North Canton in a low-income family. Her father worked as a miner, and her mother took care of the home and children. Lacking exposure to wealth, Cynthia began working at a young age. Although she couldn't afford higher education, she quickly realized that her looks could provide her with a path to a more comfortable life, leading her to pursue a career as a dancer. At this time, Cynthia, a 20-year-old, attended a nightclub casting call in 1978, managed by Ed, who was 15 years her senior. Although she didn't get the job, she caught Ed's attention and they began dating. He seemed to be a convinced Catholic and was in no hurry to get married. However, after 6 years together, they got married in a lavish ceremony attended by over 500 guests. This marriage fulfilled Cynthia's dream of a luxurious lifestyle. Cynthia and Ed moved into a spacious mansion with 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. First of all, they wanted children, and over the next few years, Cynthia gave birth to 4 daughters. Ed felt this wasn't enough, so they adopted 2 boys. In 1994, at the age of 40, Cynthia became pregnant again and had another girl. The family comfortably managed their large household with the help of servants and a steady income from an upscale restaurant at the club. Despite his busy work schedule, Ed always made time for his children. He would comb his daughter's hair every morning, assist with their homework in the evenings. Being a person with a healthy lifestyle, he is never absent from any sporting event. Meanwhile, Cynthia relies heavily on nannies to take care of her children and enjoys a leisurely life of partying and shopping. Her husband supported this lifestyle, giving her plenty of freedom. While his substantial wealth, Cynthia often complained about receiving too little money, even though she indulged in whatever she wanted. In fact, Cynthia turned out to be not such a decent woman as she initially seemed. From the first years of marriage, she had lovers that her husband did not suspect. She flirted and met different men right in his club. One of her main lovers was Jeff Zach, a tall and charming man known for his appeal to women. He had Israeli roots. By 1976, he dropped out of school and decided to move to his homeland to study his Jewish origins. He became a citizen of Israel and even served in the army as a paratrooper. Jeff was multilingual and claimed to be a special agent involved in real combat operations. After 3 years, he returned to the United States. At 29, he met a beautiful brunette named Bonnie Cook in an Arizona restaurant. They quickly fell in love, decided to solidify their union by marriage, and then have children. During this time, Bonnie discovered a different side of her husband. She noticed that Jeff seemed to have 2 contrasting personalities. One was calm and gentle, while the other was aggressive and cruel. These personalities appear unpredictably. 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed a son. During this period, Jeff attempted to start a new business. He had many different startup ideas, but none were successful. They managed to make ends meet and moved into a comfortable 2-story house in the small town of Stowe, Ohio. Here, Jeff began a business involving vending machines. Although he became somewhat calmer over time, he still frequently experienced angry outbursts. His violent nature even led to several legal issues. Shortly after moving in one evening, Bonnie and Jeff were dining at Ed's club when Bonnie noticed her husband staring intently at a beautiful stranger. During dinner, Jeff even complimented the blonde multiple times, which greatly upset Bonnie. This attractive woman was Cynthia. That night, Jeff also met Ed, the owner of the club, and realized that building a friendship with him could significantly benefit his business. He spent the rest of the evening socializing with Ed and his wife, leaving Bonnie alone at the table. Jeff and Ed quickly hit it off and began a friendship. Eventually, Bonnie and Cynthia also grew close, regularly visiting each other's families and celebrating holidays together. Ed invested in Jeff's business by purchasing 100 vending machines and connecting him with valuable partnerships. This investment allowed Jeff to place machines in prime locations throughout the city, leading to the success of his business. Despite the rapid development of the business, soon, Bonnie became the main breadwinner of the family. Her career as a real estate agent was thriving. During this time, Jeff retired a little from business Respawn and spent more time with their son. The boy helped service vending machines, buy products for them, and carry out scheduled repairs. Jeff also started attending his son's training sessions and sporting events. Despite the fact that the life of both families seemed ideal from the outside, problems continued inside. Cynthia, who was 40 years old at the time, struggled with depression. Her friends encouraged her to participate in a local beauty contest in Agaya in 2000, specifically for married women over 21. Although Cynthia met the age requirement, she would be competing against younger women, many nearly half her age. Despite this challenge, she was determined and motivated. Winning the contest could allow her to represent her state at the national level and potentially advance to international competitions. The prizes included gold jewelry and complimentary beauty salon appointments. Cynthia was motivated by a desire to win and prove that she was the most beautiful in the city and the state. Her main goal was to gain influence. To prepare for the beauty contest, she tightened her diet and increased her training. Ultimately, Cynthia placed third in the competition. Despite her disappointment, she held her head high and smiled when the winner was announced. Competing at 40 years old as a mother of 7 against 20-year-olds was a significant achievement in itself. Even though she didn't win first place, her popularity grew. On June 16, 2001, multiple calls came into the police station near a gas station reporting an attack on the driver of a Ford SUV vehicle. 2 witnesses heard an explosion and saw a man, injured in the head, still alive but struggling to breathe. Fortunately, a nearby nurse intervened, with help from another bystander, to pull the victim out of the car and provide first aid. They called emergency services and managed to keep the driver alive until paramedics arrived. The man was rushed to a medical center, where doctors did everything they could to save him. However, he tragically died just minutes after arrival. Law enforcement quickly secured the area and the vehicle. The driver's side window was shattered. The bullet entered through the cheek and exited the other side of the skull, breaking the passenger window. The deformed bullet was later discovered on the street near the car, while the cartridge case was found approximately 100 meters away from the parking lot. Witnesses, including a gas station employee, Carolyn Hyson, saw the victim arrive just before the attack. Shortly after, a motorcyclist pulled up, calmly approached the driver's side window, and attacked with weapons. Carolyn had a clear view of the criminal as he looked directly at her before he got on his motorcycle and rode away. He was a stocky man with dark hair, dressed entirely in black, resembling Ghost Rider, which seemed unusual for a summer day. However, he was wearing a helmet, so she couldn't see his face. Meanwhile, she was able to provide a detailed description of the motorcycle. It was a Street Fighter model, black and gray with neon green lights. She recalled that this distinctive man had been seen riding back and forth on the street multiple times, as if he was deliberately waiting for his target. After Carolyn reported the case at work, 2 managers ran out to the car. They were the ones who provided first aid and called an ambulance. The police quickly accessed the gas station's surveillance footage. but unfortunately, the quality was too poor to identify the attacker. They could see the motorcycle, but not its license plate. Detectives began investigating the identity of the murdered man to compile a list of potential suspects. To their surprise, they discovered that many people had negative opinions about him. Jeff was known to be difficult, hot-tempered, and often argued with neighbors over trivial matters. The investigation found that Jeff had several problematic business relationships and was involved with married women. He also had a criminal record. In 1981, he was convicted for running an illegal escort agency in Arizona. At the store where he frequently purchased supplies for his machines, people spoke poorly of him. He was notorious for flirting with attractive female employees, many of whom were schoolgirls working part-time. One witness recounted an incident involving a 17-year-old girl whom Jeff harassed to obtain her phone number. After she reluctantly provided it, he began calling her incessantly, offering money for intimate. This harassment continued until the girl's father intervened, threatening Jeff with legal action for corrupting a minor. There were other similar incidents, which contributed to his tarnished reputation. Detectives were aware of many individuals who might seek revenge against him. When the police arrived at Jeff's family's home to inform his wife about the incident, she was shocked and started to cry. They had been married for 15 years. Although she couldn't believe what had happened, she didn't appear especially surprised given her husband's controversial reputation and the many people who disliked him. Bonnie recounted the events of the day her husband was killed. That morning, Jeff was at home with his wife and son. He needed to go on his usual trip to check on the machines and restock them. Jeff asked his son for help, but the boy, upset with his father, refused. This prompted an argument between them, which Bonnie mentioned was a common occurrence. She herself was tired of the behavior of her husband, who treated her frankly badly. She admitted that she was thinking about divorce. Fortunately the teenager refused to help his father. It is possible that this saved his life. Typically, when disagreements arose, Jeff would react aggressively towards his son. During one instance, he attempted to involve Bonnie in an unpleasant discussion, but she chose to ignore him. He then claimed to have found a new woman who was superior to Bonnie in every way. She recognized this as another attempt to provoke her and continued to disregard his comment. To back up his claim, Jeff left the house, stating he was going to see his mistress. However, in reality, he went to wholesale warehouses to purchase items for vending machines. For several hours, he was in stores arranging merchandise, with this confirmed by witnesses and surveillance footage. The trips ended with a stop near a gas station where the killer acted quickly. There was reason to believe that Jeff was a big fan of lying. He frequently confided in a friend for the most intimate things. The police interviewed this friend, and he confirmed that Jeff tended to exaggerate his past to fit in with wealthier social circles. They also spoke with the victim's son. He supported his mother's account of a conflict with his father that morning. He struggled with mixed emotions regarding his parents. He loved his father, as they had grown closer recently. However, he was deeply troubled by his father's treatment of his mother, having witnessed years of emotional abuse and infidelity. The schoolboy really wanted to help find the killer. The numerous betrayals of Jeff seemed like a valuable clue. In addition, shortly before the massacre, Jeff deceived the contractors who were doing construction work. He paid them only about $7,000, less than the initial agreement, under a far-fetched pretext. However, these builders had a confirmed alibi. Bonnie stated that she didn't have specific suspicions about the killer, but she described Jeff as having a nasty and aggressive personality, which could lead him into trouble at any moment. She mentioned that he frequently received threatening messages and calls. One of the strange messages was saved on the answering machine, and she showed it to the police. It was received on Wednesday, June 13, at 2:55 p.m. from a man. According to Bonnie, when Jeff listened to the message, he became visibly agitated. Previously, he had taken such calls lightly, sometimes even joking about them, but this time he became restless and started pacing the room, deep in thought. Bonnie didn't know who the caller was, but she felt the voice on the recording sounded menacing. After the conversation, he said goodbye and mentioned they would speak again soon. Bonnie revealed that her husband left and went into hiding for several days after the call. He only returned home on Saturday morning, just before his death, and was in a very bad mood. The police interviewed all of Jeff's relatives and friends. Even his parents described Jeff as a swindler and a manipulator, someone unreliable, often distracted, who could also be involved in mischief and intimidation. During their investigation, officials discovered light illegal substances in Jeff's pockets, pointing to another area of inquiry. It seemed Jeff had connections to the criminal underworld, or perhaps he owed someone money, and this became the reason for the massacre. However, this line of investigation also led to no new findings. A forensic expert established more details surrounding the cause of death. The bullet entered through the right ear, damaging the oral cavity and causing severe bleeding. Within minutes, his lungs filled with blood, leading to choking. The wound itself turned out to be non-fatal. After talking to people involved with Jeff, the detectives eventually contacted the George, who had a close relationship with Jeff. They discovered that Cynthia was one of Jeff's mistresses, and their affair had lasted nearly a decade. This revelation drew significant attention during the investigation. The investigators also was revealed that Cynthia had a history of infidelity, maintaining several extramarital relationships. Before, when the detectives arrived at George's family mansion, Cynthia answered the door. She appeared disoriented, speaking slowly and in a confused manner. She claimed to already know about the murder because her husband showed her a newspaper that reported on Jeff's death on the front page. This event upset her. Cynthia was reluctant to answer many of their questions. She gave vague responses to some inquiries and ignored others altogether. Ed also responded evasively, denying any involvement of their family in the tragedy. They was clearly trying to avoid being connected to the investigation or appearing in police reports, as this could harm their reputation. Cynthia provided an alibi for both herself and Ed. Then that was verified. Surprisingly, Bonnie was fully aware of the affair between her husband and Cynthia. Jeff had informed his son about the relationship several years after it began. The reason for this disclosure was unclear. This painted a negative picture of Jeff's character. Bonnie suspected the affair as early as 1998, when she accidentally overheard a phone conversation between Jeff and Cynthia. Although she caught him being unfaithful, he managed to reassure her and deflect her concerns. Realizing she needed stronger evidence, Bonnie decided to spy on her husband and eventually confirmed her suspicions is right. By the end of 1999, Jeff confessed that he had been involved with Cynthia for 10 years. He claimed that their relationship had ended, and they were now just business partners. The mother of Jeff supported Bonnie's claims, stating that she was aware of her son's infidelities, including his involvement with Cynthia. Jeff frequently shared his personal thoughts with his mother, but she also insisted that he loved and respected Bonnie. After speaking with close friends of the George family, the police uncovered several intriguing details. Jeff met Cynthia at a club in 1991, where he pretended to be a doctor. When Cynthia discovered he was lying, he created a new story, claiming to be a special agent. This deception captivated Cynthia, a socialite. Interestingly, it was Cynthia who wrote the check to purchase the machines, not her husband. Her feelings for Jeff Stem was explained by Ed's preoccupation with work, which leaves her feeling neglected. Some suspected that Ed might have been aware of it for years. However, his strong Catholic beliefs prevented him from ending his marriage to the mother of his 7 children. Others thought he was completely unaware of the situation and blindly trusted his attractive wife. During the interrogation, the nanny shared valuable insights. She, describing Cynthia as self-centered, noted that Cynthia paid little attention to their children. She also saw Cynthia and Jeff, along with their children. She mentioned that Jeff treated his mistress similarly to how he treated his wife, including an incident where he hit Cynthia in public, leaving a bruise on her face. Additionally, it was revealed that Cynthia's youngest daughter might have been the result of an affair, as Jeff showed a lot of affection towards little girl and even took her for walks. It seemed unlikely that someone like him would invest time in another person's child. Due to these suspicions, Cynthia's youngest daughter had to undergo a DNA test, which confirmed that Jeff was indeed her father. After leaving the doctor's office with little girl, Ed stated that he didn't care about her biological parentage. He would love her, just like he loved his other children. Eventually, Cynthia admitted to having an affair with Jeff, but she kept her other secret relationships hidden. It's difficult to believe that Ed wasn't deeply troubled by his wife's infidelity at that moment. A few weeks before the murder, Ed tried to address some issues. He apparently suspected that Jeff was having an affair with Cynthia and wanted to protect her from him. However, Jeff refused the restraining order. Furthermore, Jeff's son reported that his father has shown fearful of Ed in the weeks leading up to the incident, making Ed the primary suspect. However, detectives lacked evidence to prove his involvement. Ed's alibi checked out, but this did not eliminate the possibility that he might have hired someone to commit the crime. A reward was offered for information regarding the murder. An informant, the ex-girlfriend of a man named John Zaffino, reached out to the police. She recalled that in 2001, John had mentioned beating up an Israeli. After hearing about the murder of Jeff Zach, who was identified as a former Israeli paratrooper with gray hair, she wondered if there was a connection. She contacted John, but he was evasive. It also came to light that John owned the same type of motorcycle that was seen at the scene of Jeff's murder. This prompts law enforcement to focus on the 36-year-old John, who had a reputation for being very cruel and dangerous. Immediately after, she ended the relationship because she feared for her safety. After experiencing multiple incidents of domestic violence, the woman decided to call John and asked several leading questions. Through their conversation, it became apparent that John might be involved in Jeff's death. She also engaged in several more similar phone calls, attempting to extract a confession from him, but he responded in a paranoid manner, avoiding direct answers. Upon investigating John, it was discovered that he had access to a .357 Magnum weapon, which was the same type as the Jeff's murder weapon. Interestingly, it was also confirmed by multiple witnesses that he knew Cynthia. The story is reenacted that Cynthia met John, an unemployed truck driver, in 2000, and they began an affair while she was still in a relationship with Jeff. 9 months later, in May 2001, she decided to end her relationship with Jeff and asked him to stop contacting her. However, Jeff was persistent and continued to call. Cynthia's husband noticed these unusual phone calls and suspected her. Whenever he picked up, the caller would hang up immediately. Ed did not want a public investigation and public attention to his private life, so he did nothing. Yet, he suspected that at the center of this problem was his wife's relationship with John. Details of their relationship become clearer when several expensive purchases John are discovered. John claimed he was at a car dealership about 40 minutes from the crime scene at the time of the attack. However, the investigation revealed that he was actually on a mobile phone call and his location was tracked to a gas station. He only arrived at the car dealership 2 hours later. Investigators were able to track John's geolocation and review his phone records, leading them to suspect that Cynthia had ordered the crime. Adding to the evidence, a voice analysis confirmed that a threatening phone call received by Jeff was directed at John. The police believed that Jeff had begun threatening Cynthia when she decided to end their relationship, which he strongly opposed, which was quite consistent with Jeff's temperament. Feeling threatened, Cynthia decided to take action against him. On the tragic morning following an argument with his wife and son, Jeff looked up information about Cynthia, who he was deeply infatuated with and wanted to keep. The prosecution presented a clear narrative, but there was no evidence implicating Cynthia, so only John was taken into custody. John Zaffino's trial started on February 26, 2003. When called to testify on March 7, Cynthia chose to invoke her Fifth Amendment right, which allows her to avoid self-incrimination. Ed made the same choice. The main witness for the prosecution was John's ex-girlfriend, who detailed events from John's life leading up to the murder. The investigators also provided the murder weapon and confirmed that John owned it. Ballistic tests eliminated any doubts about this connection. However, there were no eyewitnesses identifying John as the perpetrator, nor was there any DNA evidence at the crime scene, which made the prosecutor's job more challenging. On March 10, 2003, after 4 hours of deliberation, John Zaffino was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. 23 years after the verdict, Bonnie approached John, stating that he was merely a pawn while Cynthia enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, asked if it was worth it. She likely hoped John would express his anger and reveal the truth, but he chose to remain silent. For a long time, the police lacked solid evidence against Cynthia. To bring her to justice, they gathered information about her involvement, piece by piece. On January 10, 2005, Cynthia was arrested while shopping. Ed posted bail of $2 million, allowing her to remain at home until her trial began in November 2005. The case gained momentum when new evidence emerged. Investigators discovered that John had planned to attack Jeff on May 8 while Jeff was relaxing in a national park. During this time, John was on a bridge talking on the phone with Cynthia for about 3 hours. She was also on another call with Jeff, coordinating their actions. The attack was interrupted when a park ranger noticed John's weapon case. When questioned, John claimed this was a misunderstanding and waiting for his girlfriend. A week later, a mushroom picker found a weapon in the park, which provided indirect evidence of Cynthia's involvement in the conspiracy. Ed hired a strong defense team of 5 lawyers for his wife, significantly reducing the prosecution's chances of success. During the trial, many revealing details emerged about Cynthia and her affair with John. The investigators was noted that Cynthia even paid for John's lawyers. One significant piece of evidence included recorded phone conversations between John and his sisters, which featured incriminating remarks in which he pressured Cynthia to uphold her part of their agreement. The defense argued that Cynthia had no reason to want Jeff dead and no motive to be involved in a murder plot. In contrast, the prosecution firmly claimed that Cynthia had a motive for the murder. After their breakup, Jeff tried to keep Cynthia in his life. They frequently argued, especially concerning their daughter, whom he threatened to take with him to Israel. Cynthia also felt at risk of their affair being revealed by Jeff, which could lead to her public humiliation. During the trial, 2 letters from Cynthia to John, who was in prison, were presented. These letters revealed their ongoing romantic relationship and showed that she remained deeply connected to him. In one letter, she sent him a Bible and expressed that she frequently prays for him. After facing public humiliation due to Cynthia's actions, Ed defended her against conspiracy charges. He emphasized his commitment to their marriage vows and refused to seek a divorce. Surprisingly, Cynthia chose not to testify in her defense, and John also did not take the stand. Ultimately, Cynthia was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and received, with the possibility of parole in a year. After the trial, Ed continued to defend his wife. He hired new lawyers who filed an appeal on her behalf. Cynthia served 16 months before she was released on March 22 after Ohio's 9th District Court of Appeals ruled that the circumstantial evidence presented by prosecutors, including phone records, correspondence, and financial documents, was insufficient to prove her guilty. Cynthia continues to live a normal life now. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on April 8, 1989, in San Jose, California. He grew up with his mother, Cher Johnson, with whom he had a very close relationship. In 2002, they moved to Kalispell, in northwestern Montana, a small resort town located in the Flathead Valley, between the lake of the same name and Glacier National Park. Cody spent much of his childhood exploring the natural beauty, taking long road trips with friends, and developing a passion for cars. According to friends and family, Cody was down-to-earth, approachable, charismatic, and altruistic. He was always willing to help people when he knew them well. Cody turned his childhood passion for cars into a thriving business. He first started modifying and upgrading cars for racing as a teenager, and later expanded it into a commercial car business. Today, Cody is a custom commercial car builder. He also worked at Nomad Communications with his uncle and a few friends who were also passionate about cars. Cody's life was almost perfect, except for someone to share it with. Cody was looking for a life partner. He had talked to friends about his desire to marry a church girl, and on Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would change his life. Jordan Lynn Graham, born in August 1991, has lived in Kalispell with her family since she was a child. She grew up in a religious family and attended First Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her life was rooted in faith, and her friends were all churchgoers. She dreamed of becoming a stay-at-home mom and raising a family. Jordan and Cody met on Halloween 2011 and immediately hit it off. Although initially shy, Jordan gradually opened up and started talking to Cody. She shared with him her dream of having a family and her love of nature and the outdoors. Jordan was very interested in Cody, but she was only 20 at the time and not ready for a serious relationship. They dated a few times, but remained friends. Things changed when Cody decided to pursue Jordan more seriously. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began attending her group. Soon, their casual relationship turned into something more, at least for one of them. They started dating officially in November 2011, and Cody was completely smitten with her. He admired her and wanted to be with her 24/7. According to Sher Johnson, after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was certain he wanted to marry Jordan. Even when Jordan told him she wanted to stay a virgin until marriage, he didn't change his mind. However, people close to them noticed that Jordan seemed less infatuated with Cody than before. Some suggested that this could be due to Cody's shyness, but others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They did not show affection in public, did not hold hands, or flirt with each other. Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, after a year of dating. Although they thought she was not serious enough for marriage, they were still happy for her. In an Instagram post, Jordan showed off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was scheduled for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, as was Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and maid of honor. Jordan, however, seemed to be the one who was most involved in the preparations for the wedding. She even performed a song that the couple had hired professional songwriter Elizabeth Shea to write. In retrospect, the lyrics seemed rather cold, almost foreboding. However, whenever Kimberly or anyone else mentioned actually marrying Cody, Jordan's mood worsened. She repeatedly asked Kimberly if she was doing the right thing. On the wedding day, she couldn't hide her true feelings about the marriage. She was very nervous, often looking down and seemingly not wanting to make eye contact with her husband during the wedding photos. However, Jordan seemed to calm down well, and by the time it came time for the first dance, she was completely focused on Cody. This happiness didn't last long. The morning after their wedding, Jordan texted her friend from the hotel where they were honeymooning. She hadn't consummated their marriage and had turned her husband down each night since their wedding. She shared her concerns with her friend, saying, "I know he's going to want to be intimate, but I'm really not interested." She also made an excuse, "My period started tonight. I really hope it works because if I'm pressured to do something, I'm going to freak out." It turned out that Jordan was extremely afraid of sex, and a mix of her faith and her true feelings for Cody made her anxious about being intimate with him. The pressure kept building until July 7, 8 days after their wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends but canceled at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some private time at the lake, they joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to notice that Cody was missing. Cody was a model employee who always arrived on time before the workday began. However, when Cody still hadn't shown up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for some time without a response, Cameron grew concerned and decided to enter the house. Finding no one inside, he began to search for clues about Cody and Jordan's whereabouts. Unfortunately, his search yielded little information. Cameron's concern turned into fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. He immediately realized something was amiss because Cody never went anywhere without his phone, and leaving it behind might indicate that something terrible had occurred. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen him since the dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report. And the authorities treated the case seriously from the start. Cameron's distress emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was among the first to question Cameron. He found it unusual that it was the boss who reported the person missing, rather than the wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan. When she asked about the situation, Jordan explained that she had seen Cody leaving with some friends in a black car with Washington license plates. She mentioned that on their way back from the restaurant, Cody received a phone call that upset him greatly, so she thought it would be best to give him some space. However, later that night, she went to the garage to retrieve her phone charger, which she claimed she had left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody saying he was going to take a ride with some friends visiting from out of town. She informed the police, just as she had told Kimberly, that she didn't know who these friends were. But Cody often mentioned taking his visitors to Glacier Park. She explained to the police that she didn't recognize any of the men and that there had been no argument that night. Regarding Cody's disappearance, Jordan said she assumed he was out joyriding with his friends. When the police asked why she hadn't reported him missing, she said she didn't want to upset him if he returned in a few hours. 48 hours after Cody disappeared, his and Jordan's friends and families gathered at their home, expressing confusion about Cody's behavior. It was unlike him to leave without telling anyone where he was going. Despite this, Jordan insisted on her story until Kimberly challenged her. As the meeting continued, Jordan appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, she became so upset that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought it was a strange reacting mechanism, Kimberly believed something more was happening. She called her friend when she got home. The following day, Jordan was summoned to the station, where the officers questioned her about the inconsistencies in her story. One officer said, "I'm noticing some discrepancies between what you're telling me and the information I've gathered from others." He continued, "I've talked to a few people, and it's crucial for me to know you're being truthful." Jordan responded, I understand. However, the officer insisted, "I believe there's more to it." Sher Johnson met with the police that day, carrying Cody's phone records from the day he disappeared. Concerned about her son, she hoped the mysterious person Cody had called would provide clues about his whereabouts. However, it turned out to be a friend from the car community calling to return a tool to Cody. This friend was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he had a strong alibi. His wife was in labor when Cody went missing. With all leads exhausted, the police refocused on Jordan, who had a story that didn't quite make sense. The breakthrough they needed came on July 10th. A mysterious email from Carmen Tony 607 arrived, claiming Cody was dead and the search could be called off. The email said, "Hello Jordan, my name is Tony. There is no need to look for Cody anymore. He is gone. Jordan showed her best friend Hannah the email, Jordan face expressionless, and explained what Carmentoni 607 claimed had happened to Cody. Allegedly, he had slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park with his mysterious friends. Hannah was almost overwhelmed when she read the message. She urged a lethargic Jordan to report it to the police. "I'm freaking out." "What are you talking about?" Hannah exclaimed. "I read the email, and it says Cody's gone." "Jordan, any reaction?" Jordan wasn't crying at all. "She just showed me the email, and I started shaking. I insisted she go to the police, and eventually, she did. But I was hurrying her, urging her to go instead of just standing there looking at me. Instead of settling the police investigation, the email only increased their paranoia. It seemed suspiciously convenient that an anonymous email would provide the information they desperately needed and suggest ending the search." Detective Corey Clark was most disturbed not by the details of the message but by Jordan's lack of emotion. She seemed unaffected by a message that essentially confirmed her husband's death. After reading the email, for looking for Cody, Jordan decided to visit Glacier National Park. She led a car with her foster brother Michael and her close friend Hannah to the Sun Road, a 30 stretch of narrow winding path leading up to a treacherous mountain overlook. Throughout the trip, Hannah noted that Jordan seemed unusually cheerful. On the way, Jordan waved her hand out the window. They didn't find anything on the first day, but on the second day, Jordan unexpectedly discovered Cody's body. Among all the cliffs and roads, Jordan guided them to this specific one, insisting on her intuition despite many recommendations from Michael and Hannah. At the summit, they parked and began hiking the loop trail. This trail was notably steep and ascended to a 200-foot cliff that provided a view of a deep ravine. Jordan skillfully reached the top, maneuvering past sharp rocks to the cliff's very edge, overlooking the ravine. As she looked down, she tossed a rock and remarked, "I think he's down there." It took a particularly brave FBI agent tying himself to a tree and leaning over the edge, and the aid of several emergency services and a helicopter to confirm and extract the body at the bottom of the ravine. The body belonged to Cody Johnson, a newlywed car enthusiast, businessman, and pillar of the community. The question now was how Cody ended up there, and what did his wife, Jordan, and the mysterious Carmentoni 607 have to do with it? Who were the mysterious out-of-town friends that were with Cody when he fell? These were the questions that hounded the Kalispell Police Department for days to come. According to the coroner's report, Cody's head and arms were the most severely damaged from the fall. Cody's family and friends were devastated by his death, while Hannah noticed that Jordan seemed relieved. Now that Cody's body had been found, the police would close the investigation. However, the identity of Carmentoni 607 was still unclear. When asked about the message, Jordan introduced them to Tony Stalkup, a friend of Cody's who was a car enthusiast. Although Tony had not seen Cody in a long time, he was willing to let them access Cody's account. However, they could not find the necessary email address, and neither Jordan nor Cody's phone records provided much useful information. As a result, they were forced to contact Google to request the IP address of Carmentoni 607's account. While waiting for more information, the police interviewed Cody's family and friends again. During this process, Kimberly eventually revealed to the police about Jordan's premarital mood swings. Jordan had repeatedly asked Kimberly if she should marry Cody. She also expressed her fears and concerns about having sex with him. Jordan regretted marrying Cody and wished she could end the marriage. Kimberly advised her to have a frank conversation with Cody about her feelings. She texted Kimberly that she was unhappy when she should have been, and was worried that speaking up would hurt Cody. 2 days before Cody went missing, she wrote that he had been aggressive and blunt with her. On July 7th, she planned to talk to him but was afraid of his reaction. After the conversation, she went to Kimberly's house and told him that things were not going well. Cody was very angry and agitated, so she decided to leave so he could calm down. She slept over at her step-parents' house that night. When the police learned of this, Jordan became the prime suspect, and the news from Google arrived at the same time. The Google results confirmed that the Carmentoni 607 email address had been created on Jordan's stepfather's computer. A brief interview with Jordan's family members identified Jordan as the email's creator, but this was not enough to convict her. However, Cody and Jordan's cell phone records helped the police gather evidence. Cell towers indicated that they had been in Glacier National Park the night Cody went missing. Furthermore, surveillance cameras had also captured the couple entering Glacier National Park at 9:17 p.m., contradicting Jordan's claim that she was not with her husband that night. Now only Jordan knows the answer. When the police called Jordan in to present evidence, she broke down. She finally told the detective her testimony of what had happened. She said she confessed her feelings about the marriage to Cody, and they had a big fight. As a result, the two decided to travel to Glacier National Park and headed for the loop. She explained that she pushed Cody and he fell. She said she felt pressured and angry. Her story ended without a clear confession, but hinted at the blindfold incident. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was accidental and that she had not planned the attack. When asked about the plan, she replied that she had no intention of killing Cody. However, she admitted that in a situation full of strong emotions and anxiety, she took the action of pushing Cody off the cliff without any prior planning. Specifically, Jordan said that Cody turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she approached him, using both hands to push him off the cliff. Jordan also admitted to creating a private account and sending messages. In an unexpected turn of events, Jordan was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. However, the police later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22. There was a rumor that Jordan killed Cody because she wanted to end her marriage. It was assumed that she did not want to back out because she did not want to lose face for herself and her family. If Cody died, she wouldn't have to go through the divorce process. Jordan's behavior at Cody's funeral raised further suspicions, and many began to wonder if Jordan really loved Cody. Jordan faced charges of second-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial commenced on December 9, 2013. From the beginning, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's account. As the trial progressed, her situation became increasingly difficult. The prosecutors scrutinized her story, focusing on key issues such as why she had deceived Cody's friends and family about her involvement and apparent lack of remorse. Cody's family and loved ones provided portraying her as an unfeeling wife who killed her husband to end their marriage. Although her defense team claimed self-defense, the argument was not convincing. Instead, Jordan chose to accept a plea deal. Under the agreement, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for the prosecution dismissing the first-degree murder charge. As a result, she received a 30-year prison sentence with no possibility of parole. Before her sentencing, Jordan tried to take back her guilty plea after learning the prosecution would pursue a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which could result in a 50-year sentence. U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy then had to decide whether to accept her original plea or grant her a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Graham received a 30-year, 5-month prison sentence and a $16,917 fine. She will not be eligible for release until she is over 52 years old. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Lori Vallow. Chad Daybell was born on August 11, 1968, in Provo, Utah, a small town 18 miles south of Salt Lake City. He grew up in a humble family and was a quiet, shy child. In school, Chad was an average student with no standout talents or athletic skills, and he often felt self-conscious about his weight. After graduating from high school, Chad enrolled at Brigham Young University, BYU, in Utah, overcoming several challenges to do so. He a bachelor's degree in journalism in 1992. While in college, he married a woman named Tammy. The couple quickly had 5 children, 3 sons, Seth, Mark, and G, and 2 daughters, Emma and Leah. After completing his education, Chad worked as an editor for a local newspaper. To support his family through financial difficulties, he also took on jobs as a night watchman at a church and as a gravedigger at a nearby cemetery. Since Tammy focused on homemaking and raising their children, the family struggled to make ends meet. Chad then decided to use his journalism education to write a religious-themed book. He published his first work in 1999, which was a collection of religious stories and fantasy elements. To his surprise, the book became quite popular and earned him a big income. As a result, Chad quit his jobs at the cemetery and the newspaper to pursue writing full-time. About a year and a half later, he released another book titled 1 Foot in the Grave. This book was a science work in which he shared his experiences as a gravedigger and explored themes of death, the afterlife, and soul reincarnation. In 2004, Chad established his own publishing company, Spring Creek, to self-publish his writings. His works focused on views about the approaching end of the world and Judgment Day. Over time, some people noted that Chad's religious beliefs seemed to grow more intense. He published numerous fiction and popular science books that included religious themes. Additionally, he began hosting podcasts and creating audio and video sermons to help people prepare for the second coming of Christ. Chad referred to himself as an apocalyptic writer and claimed to have visions of the future, hear voices from the deceased, and receive unique prophecies. Lori Vallow was born on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. Growing up in a large family, she had 2 older brothers and 3 sisters. Her parents, Denise and Barry Cox, worked hard to support their children. From a young age, Lori was especially close to her older brother Alex, who was protective of her. During her school years, Lori was recognized as a true beauty and had many admirers. She was a charismatic blonde with a slender figure and an engaging smile, enjoying the spotlight and embodying a spirited, adventurous personality. In the spring of 1992, 18-year-old Lori married Nelson Yanes, with whom she had started dating during her senior year. However, they soon realized they had rushed into marriage and were unprepared for family life, resulting in their divorce less than a year later. They did not have any children together. In the fall of 1995, Lori remarried, this time to William Leah. A year later, they welcomed a son named Colby, but their marriage ended in 1998, just 2 years after his birth. In early 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan, who adopted her son from her previous marriage, Colby. A year later, they had a daughter named Tylee, but their marriage ended in 2005. After the divorce, an incident occurred when Joseph came to visit the children. Lori's brother, Alex, attacked him, stating in court that he was protecting his sister's honor because Joseph had insulted her. Consequently, Alex was fined and received a short prison sentence. Lori married Charles shortly after divorcing her 3rd husband, Joseph. They got married in February 2006, and Charles is 17 years older than Lori. Despite the age difference, it did not affect their relationship. Charles had been married before and had 2 teenage sons, Zachary and Nicholas, from those relationships. Lori and Charles lived in Nevada with Lori's children from her previous marriages, while Charles's sons would visit on holidays and weekends. Charles owned a small business that provided a stable income for his family. Lori, who had not pursued further education, did not work, but Charles never criticized her for it. In 2014, the couple officially adopted a young boy named Joshua Jackson, also known as J.J. Vallow, who was Charles's grandnephew. J.J. had autism and needed expensive therapy, which his relatives could afford. Towards the end of 2014, the family Charles decided to move to the Hawaiian Islands, specifically to Kauai. At that time, Zachary, Nicholas, and Colby were already adults living on their own, so the Charles family moved as a group of four: Lori, Charles, Tylee, and JJ. The family Charles moved to a well-known tourist destination and decided to open a beach bar that focused on fresh juices, smoothies, refreshing drinks, and non-alcoholic cocktails. Despite their hard work and Charles's background in business, but the bar quickly failed due to strong competition. During this period, Lori, an interest in religious literature, particularly a book series called Standing in Holy Places by Chad Daybell. She became so fascinated by the writer's Chad ideas that she became almost obsessed, buying all his books and reading them every day. In 2016, the family Charles had to leave Hawaii and move back to the mainland, settling in Arizona. While Charles worked diligently to support the family, his wife, Lori, became more engrossed in her religious beliefs, becoming disconnected from reality. In October 2018, Lori and her close friend Melanie went to an event titled Preparing People for the Second Coming of Christ, which was hosted by Chad in a nearby town. Excited to meet Chad, whom she admired greatly, Lori sat in the front row, completely focused on him, and Chad also noticed her attractive appearance. After the event, the writer Chad and religious speaker decided to personally exchange with his readers. While Lori, as expected, remained behind. She listened intently and asked if she could touch his hand. After she did, Chad looked into her eyes and revealed that they had been husband and wife in 7 previous lives. Lori and Chad exchanged contact information and began talking every day. A few weeks later, while Charles, Lori's husband, was away in Nevada for work, she invited Chad to host a gathering at her home. On that day, around 12 people gathered at the Lori house to discuss God, Judgment Day, and the Second Coming. Lori and Chad decided to work together to prepare people for the impending judgment. They started hosting podcasts about this event, delivering sermons, and writing articles. As time went on, Lori became more disconnected from reality in her family, but Charles did not notice this change right away. He believed it was just a temporary obsession that would eventually fade. By the time he recognized the severity of the situation, it was too late. Lori began to speak about dark spirits and zombies, claiming to her family and friends that she had been chosen by God for a special mission. This mission included the task of defeating the spirits of darkness, demons, and all evil. Charles's efforts to help his wife return to reality were unsuccessful, and she increasingly viewed him as a dark force that needed to be eliminated. By the end of 2018, Charles and Lori's marriage was nearing its end. In February 2019, while Charles was away on a week-long business trip, Lori replaced all the locks in their home. When he returned, Charles found himself locked out, noticed that both his car and the family truck were gone, and realized that $35,000 had been withdrawn from his bank account. Charles shouted for his wife and attempted to enter their home. In a chaotic manner, Lori rushed outside, shouting threats and insults. She yelled that his true self was gone and that a demon had taken over his body. Without hesitation, Charles went to the police station to report Lori for stealing from him and blocking his access to their home and children. He was worried that Lori had threatened to harm him, so he requested a protective order to keep Lori away from him. That evening, Charles's statements were documented as part of standard procedure. He mentioned his wife's intense religious beliefs, her expectation of an imminent apocalypse, and the tendency to categorize people into 2 groups, either light or demonic beings. Although the officers mocked him while asking questions, they still issued a protective order. The following day, Charles filed for divorce and changed the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori to his mother and sister. Charles's lawyer explained that he was worried about the well-being of JJ, who needed special care. He believed that his mother and sister would responsibly manage the insurance money and care for JJ if anything happened to him. A few months later, Charles made the critical error of rescind the restraining order against Lori. Charles wanted to reconcile with Lori and save their marriage. So he started visiting her home. He missed the children and hoped for the family to come back together. On July 11, 2019, when he arrived to see his children, he was shot twice in the chest and died. Lori's brother, Alex, called emergency services to report the shooting and admitted to pulling the trigger. He claimed he acted in self-defense, stating that Charles attacked him first with a baseball bat. In response, he pulled out a pistol and fired 2 shots at Charles. The incident was witnessed by the homeowner and the children, and their accounts of what happened were mostly similar. The court determined that the incident was an accidental killing that occurred in self-defense. Although Charles had the potential to cause serious harm with a bat due to his history as a former baseball player, Alex's head injury was minor. On the same day Charles's body was taken to the morgue, Lori hosted a party at their home, complete with music, many guests, and a disco by the pool, right where her husband had been shot and where blood was still visible. She did not organize a funeral or inform anyone about what happened. A week after Charles died, his son, mother, sister and other family members discovered the incident when they learned that his body had not yet been claimed at the morgue. After Charles's death, a series of mysterious disappearances and deaths occurred. Lori sold their home in Arizona and moved with her children to Rexburg, Idaho, near Chad and Tammy, who lived in the area. Lori's brother, Alex, also moved in with them to the same housing complex. Lori's 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, did not attend school and was rarely seen outside. This led many neighbors to be unaware of Tylee's existence. At the same time, Lori described her daughter as a dark entity during a phone call with a friend. On September 8, 2019, Tylee, Lori, and Alex visited Yellowstone Park, where were joined by Chad. Although several photographs from this trip feature Tylee, she was never seen alive again after that day. On September 24, Lori withdrew JJ's records from school, stating he would be homeschooled. Following this, JJ, 7-year-old boy, was also not seen again. Less than a month later, on October 19, Chad's 49-year-old wife Tammy died unexpectedly. Chad claimed she had a cold and cough. She likely passed away from respiratory failure during her sleep, showing no signs of foul play. Her death was classified as natural. Interestingly, Chad refused to allow an autopsy to confirm the cause of death, a choice that raised no suspicions. After Tammy unexpectedly passed away, Chad received nearly $500,000 from her insurance policy. 2 weeks later, Chad and Lori went to Hawaii and got married in a ceremony by the beach. This surprised Chad's children, people who are still grieving the loss of their mothers and found it hard to understand their father's decision. When they returned to Arizona, Chad and Lori lived together and misled others by stating that Lori's children were staying with relatives or claiming she had no children at all. They also rented a small storage unit nearby and moved all the children's belongings there, as if they had never existed in their home. On December 12, 2019, Alex passed away unexpectedly at home. Although it seemed he died from a heart attack, so his death was classified as natural. As time went on, many people began to ask Lori about her children's whereabouts. While she was able to deceive neighbors and friends, it was more challenging to maintain her lies in front of family members. Colby, Lori's eldest son, had limited contact with his mother after he moved away. he made a real effort to contact his younger sister, Tylee. At first, Lori answered the calls using her daughter's phone, pretending to be Tylee. However, Colby quickly realized that something was wrong. Meanwhile, Charles's family wanted to see JJ. They requested to take him for holidays or weekends, or just wanted to chat with him on the phone, but Lori always refused or came up with strange excuses. Eventually, JJ's grandmother reported him missing to the police. Shortly after, Colby also went to the police to help find his younger sister, Tylee. When police officers visited Lori's home and requested to speak with her children, she falsely claimed they were with relatives. This turned out to be untrue, so the police returned to her house. They gave Lori a week to bring the children to the station, but instead, she and Chad escaped to Hawaii. On February 20, 2020, Lori was arrested on Kauai and brought back to Arizona. A search of her and Chad's home was conducted, but there were no signs of the children or evidence that they had ever been there. Chad, her husband, who had been defending her by claiming she had no children, soon became a suspect himself. On June 9, police found human remains buried in their backyard. Forensic analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Tylee and her younger brother, JJ. Chad was quickly arrested for hiding evidence and being an accomplice. Authorities then chose to exhume the bodies of Tammy and Alex to determine how they died. In both cases, they discovered traces of chemicals that could cause heart failure, indicating that these individuals did not die of natural causes. The trial of Lori and Chad began in January 2021. They were charged with conspiring to commit serious crimes, committing fraud through grand theft, and engaging in insurance fraud. Additionally, the circumstances surrounding Charles's death were changed from self-defense to premeditated murder. During the trial, witnesses testified that Lori described her children as dark entities and claimed she could save their souls. There were concerns that the deaths of 16 years old, Tylee, and 7 years old, JJ, may have involved ritualistic practices. Notably, Tylee's body was found partially burned, and weeks before that, Chad sent Lori a People review email in which he rated Tylee as a level 2 dark soul. Due to the serious charges against Lori and Chad, there was a possibility of capital punishment. However, in May 2021, Lori's defense team successfully argued that she was incompetent, which paused the trial. Meanwhile, all 5 of Chad's adult children maintained their father's innocence, stating that he was framed by Lori and Alex. In 2022, after receiving treatment in a psychiatric facility, Lori was found competent to stand trial and face her charges. In March 2023, the judge decided that Lori Vallow would not receive the death penalty, a ruling that the prosecution is currently trying to appeal. Later, in July 2023, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Meanwhile, on May 30, 2023, Chad Daybell was convicted of first-degree murder of his first wife, Tammy, and Lori's 2 children, Joshua, JJ, Vallow, and Tylee, as well as conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. Chad Daybell then was sentenced to death on June 1, 2024. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Tayan. Annie Tayan, born May 1, 1965, was raised by her mother and has a lively personality. She loves to dance, play, and appreciate the simple pleasures of life. Annie cherished the dream of a large family, considering motherhood her main aspiration. She became a mother at a young age, giving birth to her first son, Jimia, when she was 18, and her second son, Sean, just a year later. When she turned 20, she had a daughter named Shane. Unfortunately, shortly after Shane was born, the children's father left Annie and chose not to be involved in their lives, leaving her with the hardships of single motherhood. Annie managed a household of 3 young children while living in a rented apartment in Maine. In 1987, when her youngest daughter, Shane, was just 6 months old, 22-year-old Annie began a new chapter in her life. She met Michael Palin, 32, a Navy officer stationed on the aircraft carrier Bramby. Their meeting took place in Portland, Maine, where Michael's ship was docked, and he felt a strong attraction to Annie during their waterfront encounter. Originally from Charleston, South Carolina, Michael was a respected Navy member, best known for his work as a computer systems operator. He was actively involved in military operations and received several awards for his service. Annie found Michael's Navy career impressive and quickly fell in love, telling a friend that he was the man she believed was truly worthy of her affections. After a few months of dating, Annie and Michael decided to move in together, starting a family with 2 sons and a daughter. Unfortunately, their lives changed completely when a fire broke out in their apartment. Annie was out at the time, leaving Michael at home with the children. Michael, along with Jemia and Sean, escaped, but Shane, who was too young to walk, was left behind. When Annie returned, she tried to enter the burning apartment to rescue Shane but was stopped by neighbors. The loss of Shane had a profound impact on Annie, who felt that the tragedy had left an irreplaceable void in her heart. As the police investigated the fire, they struggled to determine the exact cause of the fire. The circumstances surrounding the fire aroused the police's suspicions. However, the investigation ended without anyone being held accountable. After the tragedy, Annie and her sons moved into her mother's home in Portland, while Michael focused on his work and chose to live in the barracks. A few months after the move, another disturbing event occurred near Annie's mother's home. A shed in the backyard caught fire. Police quickly tracked down the source of the fire and found a lighter engraved with the word Bramby, the name of the ship where Michael worked. This evidence made Michael the prime suspect in the arson case. However, police were unable to conclusively prove his involvement due to insufficient evidence. After the second fire, child welfare agencies in Maine assessed that Annie Tayan's sons were living in an unsafe environment. As a result, they made the difficult decision to remove Jemia and Sean from her custody and place them in the foster care system under the Department of Social Services. This decision devastated Annie as she desperately tried to regain custody of her sons. Despite her efforts, she was unsuccessful, leaving her heartbroken and separated from her sons. When Michael returned to Charleston, South Carolina, he settled into a rental apartment and rekindled his relationship with Annie. Despite their complicated past, Annie agreed to move in with him in Goose Creek, a suburb of Charleston. However, her time there changed when she discovered a photo of Michael wearing a wedding ring, indicating that he was married. When confronted about it, Michael confessed that he had been married once but had long since divorced. He explained that his ex-wife, Dawn Breeze, and their 3 children lived at his mother's house in Savannah, Georgia. Although Michael assured Annie that there was no ongoing relationship with Dawn, she felt uneasy about the information. Annie considered leaving him, but decided to stay, believing that he might be the right partner to start a family with. Unfortunately, their life together soon turned sour. As Michael's behavior toward Annie became increasingly hostile and demeaning. Annie, who was planning to return to her mother's home, discovered that she was pregnant. This news caused her to put her plans on hold because she was excited about having another child. In October 1989, just a month before she went missing, Annie gave birth to her 4th daughter, Jade. Although she understood that Jade could never replace her lost daughter, she felt that Jade had brought great joy to her life. Unfortunately, a month after Jade was born, Michael's treatment of Annie took a turn for the worse. He began to publicly insult and humiliate her. Annie shared her concerns with a friend, expressing her fear that Michael would relentlessly pursue her if she tried to leave. His controlling behavior became more intense. He isolated Annie in their apartment while he was at work by disconnecting his phone, keeping it in his bag, and carrying it with him. Annie became increasingly frightened by Michael's actions. Just 2 days before her disappearance, Annie called her close friend Katie French in a distressed state. During the call, Annie revealed her plans to leave Michael. However, Michael threatened her by saying that if she left, he would keep their daughter Jade with him, preventing Annie from seeing her daughter again. Annie was in a distressed state, crying and begging Katie to come to her and Jade's aid. Unfortunately, Katie was busy and unable to help her. Instead, she sent Annie money for a bus ticket, hoping that it would allow her to escape and return to Portland. This emotional conversation would be their last. 2 days later, on November 7, 1989, Katie attempted to contact Annie but received no response. A few days later, Michael contacted Katie to inform her that on November 6, Annie had packed up and left without saying where she was going. Katie expected Annie to contact her from her new home. But after 2 weeks of silence, she began to worry. By Thanksgiving on November 24, Annie had been out of contact for 20 days. Worried about her friend, Katie contacted all of Annie's friends, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. Katie attempted to report 24-year-old Annie missing to the police, but was told that, since she was not a blood relative, she could not file a formal report. As months passed without any sign of Annie, Katie finally got Michael's mother's phone number. When she called, she was shocked to learn that Annie's youngest daughter, Jade, was staying with Michael's mother. The news confirmed Katie's worst fears. She believed that Annie would never want to leave her daughter. Shortly after this disturbing news, Michael was transferred to the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Despite the situation of Annie, the mother of his child, he showed little concern for her whereabouts. Michael did not contact the police or begin searching for her. Months after Annie Tayan went missing, an official search began following a report from her mother. The investigation quickly focused on her partner, Michael Palin, who became the prime suspect. Michael claimed that on the morning of November 6th, he woke up to find Annie had left while he was babysitting his daughter. He said that the night before, Annie had expressed a desire to end their relationship. He made no attempt to find her, believing that their relationship was over and that further contact was pointless. Michael also claimed that he was unaware that Annie had been reported missing or that she had lost contact with family and friends. When police searched the couple's rented apartment, they found no evidence, no clues, traces, or suspicious items that could help the investigation. Annie Tayan's case seemed to have stalled and no large-scale search was conducted for her. It is still unclear whether she is still alive, and any possible motive for her disappearance is unknown. The only confirmed detail is that the last person reported to have seen her was her partner, Michael. For 4 long years, there were no updates or discoveries about Annie. Her close friend Katie French was the only one actively searching for her, cooperating tirelessly with the investigation. Katie spent approximately $16,000 on phone bills alone and hired a private investigator as part of her relentless quest to find Annie Tayan. She contacted various organizations in the hopes of uncovering information about Michael's past. Katie was convinced that Michael was dangerous and untrustworthy. She feared him greatly, knowing that if he discovered her involvement with the police, it could put her in danger. In 1993, Annie's case took a major turn when it was transferred to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, marking a major turning point in the investigation. NCIS agents began a full review of the case from the beginning. They located Michael, who was stationed at Pearl Harbor Naval Station in Hawaii. When approached by Marine Corps police officers to discuss Annie's disappearance, Michael agreed to talk, but only in the presence of his attorney. He then completely stopped cooperating with the investigation and refused to provide further information. The Coast Guard gathered every available detail about Annie's disappearance and contacted South Carolina police. They asked for help in comparing their information with the records of the unidentified bodies, noting that Annie had given birth just a month before her disappearance. Then, South Carolina police reported a case involving a dead woman who had also given birth a month before her death. They sent a sketch of the woman, which shocked Coast Guard agents who saw it. They believed they might have found Annie Tayan. The discovery revealed a horrific murder. Annie's body was found near a highway in Jasper County, South Carolina, about 100 miles from where she lived with Michael. The crime scene photos were horrifying, showing a level of violence that agents said they had rarely witnessed. Annie's face was severely damaged and her skull was broken into 124 pieces, requiring nearly 500 hours of detailed reconstruction. It was also revealed that Annie's body had been placed in a navy blue bag that had been doused with gasoline and then set on fire. The burning bag was discovered at 6 a.m. on November 7, 1989, around the same time Katie French realized Annie had stopped answering her phone calls. Annie Tayan's dental records were used to positively identify her as the unidentified woman. After Annie's body was found, Michael became the prime suspect in the murder. Coast Guard agents developed a thorough investigation plan, starting with a review of his financial transactions. They discovered that on the day Annie went missing, Michael made a credit card purchase about 25 miles south of where her burned body was found. Additionally, his phone records showed that on the morning of November 6, he called his mother's home in Savannah twice, the first time at 4:35 a.m. and the second time at 5:17 a.m. Coast Guard agents believe that Michael killed Annie in their apartment and then moved her body to the side of the road, where he set it on fire. To advance the investigation, NCIS agents targeted Michael's ex-wife, Dawn Breeze. At the time of Annie's death, Dawn was still married to Michael and living at his mother's house in Savannah. After Annie's disappearance, Dawn divorced Michael and began moving frequently between states, as if she were trying to escape someone or something. The agents eventually discovered that she was living in Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1995, nearly 6 years after Annie's murder. They located Dawn, who had been engaging in spiritualistic activities for income. When the agents visited Dawn at her workplace to discuss Annie's disappearance, her response was surprisingly calm. She questioned the length of the conversation, expressing a desire to eat if the conversation was prolonged. This response surprised the agents, who had expected a more emotional response when Annie was mentioned. Dawn, however, remained calm throughout their conversation. During the 10-hour interrogation, Dawn's story initially matched Michael's. She said that when she visited Michael's apartment, he told her that his mistress had left him and that he planned to raise his daughter alone. However, there were discrepancies in the timeline of her visit. At one point, Dawn became quiet, looked down, and expressed a desire to tell the truth. Her subsequent speech was emotionless and tearless as she revealed what she had kept secret for 6 years. Dawn explained that one morning, Michael had called her urgently to his apartment in Charleston. There, she saw Annie's dead body on the living room floor. Michael then told Dawn to go into the bedroom to see his daughter. At the time, Dawn and Michael were still legally married and had 3 children together. Michael admitted to having an affair with Annie, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He begged Dawn to accept the child and help him raise her. Dawn suggested that Michael, not wanting to fight for custody of Annie, had chosen murder as a simpler solution. On the night of November 5 to 6, 1989, Michael and Annie went to bed after having an intimate moment. Annie soon fell asleep, and during this time, Michael picked up a crowbar and began to violently attack her. Shockingly, their daughter Jade was sleeping next to Annie during the attack. Michael continued to hit Annie in the head more violently, and although she tried to fight back, she eventually died of her injuries in their bed. Michael then contacted his wife Dawn and asked her to come over immediately. He placed Annie's body in a duffel bag and placed it in the trunk of his car, along with a can of gasoline. He then put Dawn and Jade in the back seat of his car and drove about 100 miles. When he found a secluded spot along the side of the road, he took Annie's body out of the trunk, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Once the fire was out, he quickly got back in the car and drove Dawn and Jade back to his mother's house in Savannah. Dawn's revelations marked a major turning point in the investigation, marking the first significant piece of evidence since the discovery of Annie's remains. Police asked Dawn to make a recorded phone call to her ex-husband, Michael, to discuss Annie's murder. Dawn agreed and contacted Michael, saying she needed to have a serious conversation because Annie's body had been found. Michael's response, "No, they didn't," confirmed to police that Dawn's account was credible. During the call, Dawn mentioned that blood had been discovered in their old apartment and that NCIS was investigating them as suspects in the murder. She urged Michael to come up with an explanation for the blood. Michael responded, "Okay, we need to work together and come up with something," which did not include any direct admission of guilt. However, his tone suggested that he understood the seriousness of the situation. He did not ask unnecessary questions or deny involvement, indicating that he knew what was being discussed. This conversation further supported the theory that Annie was murdered in Michael's apartment. At the end of the conversation, Michael warned Dawn to be careful with her phone calls and assured her that they would work together to resolve the situation. NCIS agents took Dawn to the crime scene to search for any remaining evidence. To protect her identity and ensure her safety as a cooperating witness, they disguised her before arriving at the apartment. Dawn carefully described and demonstrated the location of Annie's body and a sequence of events. She pointed out a spot near the wall and baseboard where a large amount of blood had seeped into the carpet and concrete floor below. Since Michael moved out, the landlord had replaced and cleaned the carpet several times, which is why there were no visible traces of blood. However, when the police used a special chemical on the concrete floor, a large purple stain appeared, indicating the presence of protein and matching Dawn's description of where Annie's body had been. Although the blood had soaked into the concrete, NCIS still had difficulty proving with certainty that the substance was blood. Therefore, the search for more physical evidence continued. Dawn mentioned a dresser next to the bed where Annie was killed, which contained a television covered in blood from the murder. Michael had said that the television needed a thorough cleaning because of the stains. He had then thrown it away, presumably selling it rather than throwing away a working device. Given his thrifty tendencies, finding the television was difficult. However, the agents were determined to find it. At this point, Michael realized that NCIS was watching him, especially after a phone call with his ex-wife, Dawn. Realizing this, he became very wary of their surveillance. NCIS agents were concerned that Michael might attempt to escape, threaten witnesses, or possibly harm someone. During a surveillance mission, Michael attempted to escape from the police, but was quickly apprehended by the police. As a result, on October 11, 1995, he was arrested, while he was being held in a military prison on suspicion of murder. NCIS agents interviewed all the residents of the apartment complex where the murders took place in November 1989. 3 months later, their efforts finally paid off when a neighbor revealed that he had purchased a television from Michael. Amazingly, the television was still working and in his home. The police quickly confiscated the television and sent it to the FBI lab for detailed forensic analysis. This examination led to a major breakthrough. They found 11 bloodstains on the speaker, which were later determined to match Annie's DNA, providing a key piece of evidence in the murder investigation. At this point in the case, Michael's attorney announced that he was willing to plead guilty, but only if the death penalty was dropped. Although the prosecutor was not happy with this development, military law required such deals to be considered at trial. Michael admitted his guilt without showing much emotion, recounting the details of his crime. His story showed no signs of remorse or sorrow. Michael Palin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 30 years. Although Dawn knew about her husband's crimes and kept quiet for 6 years, she avoided legal consequences because her confession to NCIS was crucial in moving the investigation forward. Annie's children, including her son and daughter, now know what happened to their biological mother and understand that she did not abandon them. Jade, Annie's daughter with Michael, has grown into a beautiful woman. In a surprising turn of events, Michael Palin was released from prison in 2013 after serving only 17 years, supposedly for good behavior. His whereabouts are currently unknown, and anyone who sees him is advised to exercise caution. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Christy Johnson. Christy Johnson was born in 1981 in Santa Clara, California, USA. She lives with her parents, Teresa and Kirk Johnson. When she was a child, her family moved from California to Saugatuck, a small town in Michigan. Saugatuck is a quiet town with less than 1,000 residents. It seems like a safe place to build a happy future, with an extremely low crime rate. The locals feel so safe that they don't even lock their doors. It's a tight-knit community where everyone knows each other. Christy has an older brother named Derek, who is just a few years older than her. Her parents later divorced, but they maintained a good relationship for the sake of their children. Christy and Derek took turns living with their father and mother as required by the custody agreement. As a result, Christy quickly took on household responsibilities. From the age of 12, she began helping her mother, including managing the family budget. Christy sought part-time work to gain independence and avoid having to ask her parents for money. Eventually, her brother Derek enlisted in the army and decided to pursue a career in the military. During this time, Christy was in high school. Christy is fun and interesting to talk to. She leads an active and healthy lifestyle. Christy enjoys sailing, surfing, and anything water-related. She also enjoys theater and is a member of a small acting club. In the winter, she works as a waitress at a local cafe. Her pleasant, polite, and sociable attitude attracts many customers. Christy grew increasingly eager to leave the small town of Saugatuck, as the peaceful environment there did not suit her. In 1999, she graduated from high school, finally having the freedom to begin forging her own path to success. After some reflection, Christy decided to begin her journey of exploring different cities, exploring different jobs. Initially, she moved in with her grandmother in the small resort town of Santa Maria. Population 100,000. Finding a job to support herself was important. She then worked as a systems administrator for an electric utility company and continued her education. Christy decided to enroll in the University of California, a 40-minute drive from her grandmother's home. Although she used her savings to buy a car, the daily commute proved difficult, so Christy looked for work closer to her studies. Christy got a part-time job with a film crew. Her experience working in a theater group helped her adjust to her new work environment. She was hired as an assistant on the set of a horror film, where she met people from Hollywood. She interacted with world-famous actors and directors and felt extremely happy. Christy was fascinated by the world of cinema. Inspired by this experience, she wanted to get more involved in the industry, so she enrolled in professional makeup courses taught by Hollywood makeup artists. After mastering these skills, she considered becoming a makeup artist on set and planned to move to Los Angeles. She eventually moved to Los Angeles, where many famous film studios were located. When she arrived in her new environment, she avoided parties and social gatherings. She had a boyfriend whom she met a few years ago. They kept in touch despite the distance, and later he moved in with her. They rented an apartment together in Los Angeles. Since 2002, they have been struggling financially. Although it was not easy, Christy persevered in finding a stable job. Christy still had not found a steady job, so most of her income came from her boyfriend. Then their relationship deteriorated. Christy confided in her mother that their arguments often ended with him physically abusing her. She felt trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother began looking for a new place for Christy to live. Eventually, Christy left her boyfriend, moved into a small apartment, and continued her studies. Her father supported her financially, hoping that she would find her way. By November 2002, Christy had found a job at a cell phone company. Although the job did not match her career goals or salary expectations, her mother then found her a new home close to her workplace in Santa Monica, a town near Los Angeles, where Christy shared a living space with 2 other girls. During this time, she transferred to Santa Monica College. Christy's Hollywood dreams did not come true. Her relationship ended and she started over. Despite this, she remained determined and continued to pursue her dreams. On February 15, 2003, Christy was scheduled to attend a party. Before that, she went to a shopping mall and had a long phone conversation with her mother about her future plans. This turned out to be the last time the family heard from her. The next day, February 16th, Christy's mother tried to call her daughter. At first, she was not worried, thinking that Christy might be resting or working and unable to answer the phone. However, when she received no response, she became more worried. By 9 a.m. the next day, Christy's mother contacted her workplace, where Christy was known to be punctual and reliable. Christy's manager confirmed that she had not shown up for work. A coworker told her that Christy was supposed to be attending a party. Christy's mother searched her daughter's social media but found no useful information about the event. Although Christy shared many photos of her life, she had not posted anything about the party. The mother also reviewed Christy's bank account transactions and noticed that there had been no activity since Christy stopped communicating. Worried, she called all the hospitals, but Christy was not admitted to any of them. On February 17th, her mother reported Christy missing to the Santa Monica Police Department. Police investigated whether she had been involved in any traffic accidents but found no clues. Friends who lived with her reported that they had not heard anything unusual after she went missing. Police contacted her ex-boyfriend, Todd. They considered the possibility that he might have harmed her, but he denied seeing her. Neighbors said they saw Christy on Saturday, February 15th, on her way to a party, but they did not know who she was with or where the party was. The police had to get at least something connected with the Christy, so her car, a white oil Mint, was sought. While interviewing her mother, they learned more about her ex-boyfriend, Todd, and her new boyfriend, Lucas. However, Christy's mother had very little information about Lucas. She didn't even know his last name, which complicated the investigation. It had been 48 hours since Christy was reported missing, a critical time frame in which police feared she might not be alive. They began checking cell phone records and discovered that Christy's last outgoing call was made at 5:34 p.m. on February 15th. She had called the helpline at 411, which could indicate that she was in distress and seeking assistance with an address or phone number. The conversation lasted about 3 minutes, suggesting it was important to the investigation, but specific details could not be obtained because the calls were not recorded. After that call, Christy's phone battery died, with her last known location being near Ventura Boulevard. Police reached out to the media to assist in the investigation. News outlets quickly began to cover Christy's disappearance. Police searched Christy's apartment for clues and discovered a receipt from a lingerie store dated February 15th, the day she went missing. They also learned that Christy had been in contact with Todd, her ex, despite his violent tendencies. She last visited him on February 7th. Police discovered a key clue while reviewing Christie's emails. On February 13th, Christie sent a message to the event manager expressing her intention to purchase tickets. However, she was told that all the tickets were sold out and was placed on a special waiting list. This tactic is often used by event organizers to deceive customers and then sell tickets at a higher price. The police then found Christie's new boyfriend, Lucas, and interviewed him. He reported that he last saw Christie on February 14th, the day she went missing. They spent the evening watching a movie before saying goodbye. He passed a polygraph test, had a solid alibi, and did not raise any suspicions with the police. Next, police spoke with Christie's ex-boyfriend, Todd, who also had an alibi. He was confirmed by multiple witnesses to be out of town. Police focused in particular on the party Christie attended when she went missing. Police contacted the organizers of the event and were surprised to learn that Christie had never purchased a ticket and did not attend the party. This raised questions about where she might have gone instead. To reconstruct the timeline of that evening, police reviewed transactions made with Christie's bank card. This investigation revealed the stores she had visited that day. Police then searched for surveillance camera footage that might provide details or clues about her activities. The police then received a call from a woman named Susan Murphy, who reported seeing a suspicious person. She recounted her encounter with a man named Victor Lawrence Paleologos at a store, where Victor said he was a representative of a film company that was casting for a new James Bond film. Susan said he asked her to audition for the role of Bond's girlfriend, complimented her appearance, and tried to convince her to join. Feeling uncomfortable with him, she eventually turned down his offer. To ensure her safety, her husband, a former police officer, went to see Victor. He spoke to Victor to try to learn more about his intentions, but Victor fled without providing any useful information. Susan later investigated Victor further and discovered that he had lied, that he had absolutely nothing to do with the film. Victor likely fabricated this information to meet beautiful women, although his motives remain unclear. Although Susan is safe, Victor is still at large and could pose a danger, making it important to verify this information and locate him. They then decide to interview employees in the store. Police described Victor, who had a reputation for harassing attractive women, in these conversations. At one store, a clerk reported seeing a person matching the police description but was unable to provide any useful details. The search for Christie intensified. Police deployed dogs and volunteers to the area where she was last seen. Volunteers searched for Christie and her car. Although police had received multiple reports of sightings of a similar vehicle, those reports turned out to be false. On February 24th, police received a crucial tip. They located her car, a white Mazda Miata, in a parking lot near the shopping center where Christie had been shopping. A forensic scientist then arrived to conduct a thorough examination of the car, collecting fingerprints and other evidence found inside. A water bottle was found in the back seat, and Christie's cell phone was found in the front seat. The police encountered an unexpected revelation when they spoke with the parking attendant. He recalled an incident involving the car in question. The vehicle arrived at 17:45, but it was already reserved for another customer. A man exited the car, and when informed of the reservation, he reacted aggressively. He threw the car keys at the attendant and left without further explanation. Sadly, there were no surveillance cameras in the parking area, making it impossible to identify the driver. With no leads, the police returned to examining the Christie's purchases from that day and were taken aback. On the day she disappeared, Christie had bought a set of clothes that matched the description Susan had given when Victor asked her to prepare for the casting. He instructed Susan to buy the shortest black miniskirt possible, along with a white shirt, stockings, and shoes. All these items were purchased using Christie's bank card, leading the police to suspect that this was not merely a coincidence. This suggests that Christie may have fallen for a scammer, similar to what happened to Susan, although fortunately she was with her husband. Unfortunately, there was no news of Victor, and the police had no way to contact him. Police once again spoke to Christie's housemates. They recalled that Christie had indeed attended and tried out the role, although they could not recall the specifics. During the discussion, they noted that it was related to James Bond. They mentioned that Christie was very excited about the event, and she had gone to get ready in costume. Christie was worried about being late for the tryout the role, which was scheduled for 5:30 p.m. Police reviewed the camera footage several times to locate Victor, and unfortunately, the footage was of poor quality and they were unable to identify his facial features. However, with the help of witness statements, police were able to create a composite sketch of the prime suspect in Christie's disappearance. By February 26, the sketch was complete. An experienced police officer familiar with the case identified the suspect as Victor Lawrence Paleologus, who had just been paroled on January 20, 2003, after serving a sentence for sexual assault. Victor often used tactics like promising casting calls for parties to lure his victims. This approach worked for him, especially near the Walk of Fame, where many young women who come to Los Angeles to dream of Hollywood make them easy targets for predators. Victor first received the suspended sentence for attacking a girl. In 1998, he attempted to rape Katie Devina, presenting himself as Brian, a film producer. He received a very short sentence for this crime. There are also indications that Victor had embezzled money from a company before. In addition, several other women came forward as victims of his attempted rapes, but the police reports did not result in any consequences for him due to lack of evidence. He once attacked his ex-girlfriend in her own home. Although this was also an unsuccessful sexual assault, he stole money and jewelry from her apartment. This crime was largely overlooked, resulting in only a suspended sentence. He then seduced a girl named Heather, as he had done with others, and convinced her to dress in a way that pleased him. He then attempted to tie her up and rape her, but she escaped. Victor was sentenced to 2 years in prison and was paroled on January 20, 2003, just 3 weeks before Christie went missing. After his release, Victor quickly returned to his previous criminal activities. By the time police began searching for him, he had been arrested for stealing a BMW X5 in Beverly Hills and attempting to sell it using false documents. During a search of his wallet after his arrest, officers discovered a wallet containing several stolen IDs, credit cards, and other documents. The police showed Susan a photo of Victor. At the police station, Susan quickly recognized Victor in a lineup, despite his attempts to disguise himself by hunching over, changing the shape of his arms, and changing his hairstyle. Susan's husband, who had tried to stop the attacker, also confirmed Victor's identity. However, a security guard at the parking lot where Christie's car was found could not recognize Victor, as he had only seen him briefly in the darkness. Victor denied any involvement in Christie's disappearance and insisted on having a lawyer present before speaking to the police. Victor expressed concern that the authorities might be trying to frame him because he was on parole. Police kept collecting evidence against Victor, and a new witness soon came forward. A realtor had been working with Victor for several weeks and noticed his unusual behavior while looking for homes priced up to $700,000. They visited multiple properties each day, and during one visit, they experienced an incident involving lost documents and keys that suggested Victor might be involved in theft. After the realtor saw Victor's photo in a police report, they recognized him as a possible suspect. The realtor recalled Victor behaving nervously during their last meeting, which happened around the time Christie disappeared. Additionally, while viewing a house, Victor tested the soundproofing by shouting from the bathroom, raising police suspicions that he was scouting for a potential crime scene. The police investigated all the homes Victor had visited, paying special attention to one where Christie's phone last registered a signal. They searched for evidence or Christie's body but found nothing. However, when they searched Victor's apartment, they discovered unsettling photos of women in revealing clothing. After 12 days of investigation, Christie's family remained hopeful for her safe return, while Victor was uncooperative, denying any involvement but acknowledging that he had seen Christie before she disappeared. Victor was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania as the youngest of 5 brothers in a family. He attended college, earned a bachelor's degree, and then moved to Los Angeles for graduate studies. He was married from 1990 to 1993, during which time there were allegations that he attempted to poison his wife after she reported his business failures. Feeling aggrieved by the world, Victor turned to crime, and his obsession with attractive women led him to violence. On the night Christie went missing, Victor and his lawyer provided an alibi backed by witnesses, stating he was at a restaurant with a friend. Nevertheless, police believed he might have had enough time to abduct another victim despite his alibi. On March 1st, a new witness contacted the police, saying that he had seen Christie on February 15th. She was near his house, asking for directions to a mansion that looked like a castle. His wife overheard the conversation and gave Christie directions to the location. Christie later called the information desk, confirming that she was indeed looking for a house that looked like a castle, which also fit the type of house Victor was considering because of its soundproofing. While the police were following up on this lead, something else important happened. On March 3, 2003, 4 teenagers hiking in the Hollywood Hills discovered something unusual about 100 meters below them. At first, they thought it was a mannequin, but upon closer inspection, they realized it was a human body. Without cell phones, they rushed to report their discovery to a woman walking her dog on the road. The woman then went to where the teenagers pointed. She saw the victim's legs were tied and covered with a blue cloth. The woman was wearing a gray hoodie, her hands were tied behind her back, and there was a hair tie around her right wrist. She immediately called the police. Rescue workers and police quickly arrived at the scene and, after much effort, were able to remove the body from the Hollywood Hills. The medical examiner identified the body as that of Christie Johnson. Police notified Christie's parents of the tragic news, and they were devastated by the loss. Christie's body had extensive bruising and abrasions. The condition of the body was poor due to significant decomposition from exposure to heat for several days, along with a rainy day. Her face was particularly unrecognizable due to the severity of her injuries. Christie's ear was torn, and there were significant bruises on her head and neck. These injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma and strangulation, which were determined to be the cause of death. Police believed that Victor was responsible for the murder, but they needed to prove that he did not have an alibi for the time of Christie's murder. To do this, police spoke to his friend Joy, who mentioned having dinner with him that night. Upon questioning, Joy stated that they met much later than the time of Christie's death. Joy stated that Victor arrived late for their meeting, around midnight, even though they had planned to meet earlier. Victor had scratches on his face, which he attributed to minor injuries sustained while moving. The police have pieced together the events leading up to Christie's disappearance. The man, who frequently targeted victims at a shopping center, approached Christie, a young girl he found attractive. He claimed to be working in the film industry and invited her to audition for the role of James Bond's love interest. Presenting himself convincingly. Flattering Christie, he insisted she was perfect for the part, playing on her ambitions and making it hard for her to refuse. He arranged to meet her at a property he was visiting with a realtor, claiming it was for the audition. Christie prepared for the meeting and wore the outfit he requested. When they met, she became the target of his attack. She tried to scratch his face to fight back. Victor overpowered her, raped her, and killed her to prevent her from reporting the crime. He first struck her on the head and then strangled her, believing she was dead before leaving her body in the Hollywood Hills. Tragically, the blunt force trauma and strangulation didn't lead to her death immediately. She lost consciousness, and he assumed she was dead. When he discarded her onto the rocks from a significant height, she sustained even more injuries. Finally, she regained consciousness and died slowly. On May 12, 2003, the district attorney charged Victor with kidnapping, rape, and first-degree murder. The defense was well prepared to fight for his freedom, as there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. The prosecution faced a challenging task, relying on compelling arguments from forensic experts. The defense challenged the estimated time of death, citing the presence of insects on the body. However, the similarities between this case and previous attacks attributed to the same criminal. Preparations for the trial took time, and Victor finally appeared in court in July 2006. The defense argued that the prosecutor's office had little to no direct evidence linking Victor to the victim, as there was no DNA, fingerprints, or surveillance camera footage. This lack of evidence was attributed to the fact that the body was discovered 2 weeks after the disappearance, by which time it had decomposed significantly, destroying any potential evidence. However, the prosecution gained the advantage of testifying about who had accused Victor of harassment. They portrayed him as a skilled manipulator. It was clear to everyone that the victor was responsible for Christie's death. To avoid the death penalty, he decided to negotiate with the prosecution and plead guilty to a lesser charge. The only remaining step was for Christie's family to accept this deal. By that point, the trial had been ongoing for 3 weeks with little progress, and its outcome was uncertain. After enduring so much pain, the victim's family was willing to compromise to ensure justice was served. However, on the day the verdict was announced, the victor submitted an 11-page request to the judge, asking to withdraw his guilty plea. Fortunately, it was too late for him to change his mind. Victor Lawrence Paleologus was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Blanca Arellano. Blanca Olivia Arellano was born on February 6, 1971, in Hatiso Pan de Zaragoza, located in the northwest of the state of Mexico, Mexico. She was the youngest daughter of Dolores Gutierrez. She had 2 older sisters, Alejandra and Perla. Later, her sister gave birth to a baby girl named Carla Arellano. As an adult, Blanca successfully completed her education and earned a bachelor's degree in tourism. With her qualifications, she worked for several years at a travel agency. After that, her new job was as a taxi driver. In her free time, Blanca takes care of her health by cycling and going to the gym every morning. She believed that sports were essential to living a fulfilling and happy life. Although she was comfortable being on her own, she was rarely alone. She was fortunate to have close friends, Mercedes and Maru, with whom she often spent time. 3 friends meet regularly to share stories of their days and confide in each other. Spirituality plays a very important role for Blanca. She organized spiritual master classes and led meditation rituals. In particular, she has become increasingly proficient in the topic of family constellations, a topic that interests many people. She has achieved professional qualifications in this area. Although these activities are not directly related to her main job, she saw them as a way to fulfill her desire. It is about helping others find harmony and healing. Blanca always wore an amulet ring called Atlas. Inside was engraved an infinity symbol, a symbol she really liked. She even crafted a matching bracelet with the same design. She cherishes her guardian ring, believing that it protects and gives her strength on her journey to find balance and peace in her soul. Because of the profound spiritual significance, so she never removed the ring. To her, the ring talisman was far more than just a piece of jewelry. In mid-2019, Shortly before turning 50, Blanca developed an interest in online games and began spending a significant amount of time on the computer. Her niece, Carla, noticed this new hobby of hers and invited her to join a popular game. This game included a streaming platform where players could interact. One of the users was a man named Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte. In the game, players entered a virtual space, navigating obstacles and fighting for survival. Blanca became deeply engrossed in the game, especially because it allowed her to connect with people from around the globe. Before long, Blanca met Juan, the administrator of one of the virtual rooms. Juan, born in 1985, was from Arequipa, Peru. He had a twin brother and an older brother, Francisca Villafuerte, who worked as a lawyer. Juan had previously been married and had 2 children from that marriage. However, after his wife accused him of domestic violence, the relationship ended in divorce. In 2016, Juan decided to move to the city of Hua, located 2 hours by car from Lima, the country's capital. There, he enrolled in the medical faculty of the National University named after José Faustino Sánchez Carrion. Through the internet, Juan met Blanca, and they began communicating regularly. Over time, their conversations became frequent, helped both understand each other better. He trusted she so much that he made her the administrator of his virtual game room. On March 2020, Blanca spent most of her time playing online games and talking to Juan. They frequently made video calls and watched movies together late into the night. Juan, who plays guitar, often sends her videos and songs he has composed specifically for her. On her 50th birthday, he even wrote a heartfelt post on her social media page. From that moment, their relationship shifted from friendship to romance. Blanca, deeply in love, felt happiness, but she was afraid to tell her mother, sister, and friends about it. Eventually, she decided to open up and express her feelings. Juan then revealed his wish to meet her in person, which required him to travel to Mexico. However, he later admitted he didn't have enough money for the trip. Determined to make it happen, she told Juan that she would travel to Peru to make her dream come true. It was meeting him face to face. Blanca was prepared for anything. Given her challenging financial situation, she decided to sell some of her belongings, including a car, a bicycle, and various pieces of clothing. She quickly managed to gather the necessary funds. In July 2022, Blanca purchased a plane ticket to Lima. Shortly before her departure, she informed her family about her plans. Initially, her decision surprised her mother and sisters. However, after some thought, Alejandra, her older sister, acknowledged that Blanca was an adult and had the right to make her own choices in life. Ultimately, Alejandra simply wished her younger sister well. On July 27, 2022, Blanca boarded the plane, eager to reunite with Juan. A new chapter in her life began. By 2:45 a.m. the next day, she had arrived in Peru, where Juan greeted her at Jorge Chávez Airport. Their first stop was at the riverside, where Juan introduced Blanca to his family. After this gathering, they went to a room Juan had rented from Mrs. Magdi Loli Milan. However, there was a complication. The room was rented for one person only, so they had to keep Blanca a secret. One might think that Blanca would feel uncomfortable in a foreign country, where she knew no one, but she was entirely unbothered. She stayed confident in her plans, which included buying a car and becoming a taxi driver in Lima. Driving was what she did best, and she's sure she could continue her usual work in a new city. She regularly contacts Alejandra and Carla to keep her loved ones updated. She shared details about her daily life and the beautiful places she managed to visit. Everything was going perfectly for her, just as she had envisioned. Blanca was also happy to share her excitement about a new romance. She and Juan lived near the beach, a location she adored. She often recorded videos of the stunning ocean views and sent them to her family. To stay connected with Juan while he was at school, she purchased a local mobile phone. She told her mother and Carla about the phone but, curiously, didn't share her new number with them. While this struck her family as a bit odd, everything else seemed fine, and they soon let it slip from their minds. While Juan was studying, Blanca spent time alone in her room attending online training sessions with her friend, Mercedes. It was an innocent activity, but Juan disapproved, so Blanca tried to keep it hidden until he got home. Then, she admitted to Mercedes that she was secretly participating in the training. This made Mercedes reflect on Juan's overly controlling behavior toward Blanca. She started thinking about it more and more, and over time, their relationship began to fall apart. At that time, Blanca had no job, no income either, so Juan was giving her $20 a week for expenses. Their arguments and disagreements became more frequent. Sometimes, Juan made excuses about having to attend classes so he wouldn't come home in the evening. In October 2022, Juan met a woman named Carmen Marin Castillo, who rented out a room for students in Northeast Lima. Immediately after that, he and Carmen fell in love. Soon, he started spending more and more time with Carmen. Feeling confident in his feelings for her, he decided to end things with Blanca. On November 6, 2022, around 2 p.m., Juan was in Lima and sent Blanca a message saying he would arrive in 3 hours. At approximately 6 p.m., he arrived at Mercedes in Deco Street, turned off the GPS on his phone, and went to meet Blanca. He attacked Blanca, striking her multiple times on the head and ribs. He continued beating her until she stopped breathing. Using his medical tools, he dismembered her body to make it easier to easily dispose of it. Realizing that Blanca could be identified by her tattoo, he removed it and distorted her fingerprints. The next morning, Juan started searching the internet for information on how to factory reset the phone Blanca used. Meanwhile, her loved ones grew anxious because they had stopped receiving messages from her. Carla is trying to find her aunt, Blanca. She reached out to Juan on social media to ask about her aunt's whereabouts. Juan claimed he had no information about Blanca's, but he explained that Blanca was unhappy with their relationship and had decided to go to Lima for a break. He added that, after realizing he couldn't give her the life she wanted, she planned to return to Mexico. Blanca's family found Juan's explanation puzzling. She had never mentioned her relationship with him nor expressed any desire to come back home. Distrusting the words of Juan, someone they barely knew, they decided to seek help from local residents. Together, they created a social media post about Blanca's disappearance, naming Juan as the only person she had been in close contact with in the unfamiliar city. Feeling desperate and powerless due to the vast distance between them, her family managed to file an official report with the prosecutor's office after several hours, officially declaring she missing. The Peruvian National Police promptly began an investigation. Meanwhile, Juan worked on creating an alibi. He called his university friend, Edson Amir Flores Aragon, claiming he felt unwell and needed some help. Around 4 p.m., Edson arrived at Juan's house, where Juan offered him a few drinks. After some time, Edson became heavily intoxicated. By approximately 6 p.m., Juan took he outside, ensuring the neighbors saw them together. The two then went to a store, where Juan purchased 8 garbage bags. Afterward, Juan said goodbye to Edson and returned home. Once alone, Juan placed Blanca's dismembered body into the garbage bags. Later that evening, he went to the beach near the port of Chorrillos to dispose of the remains. At the site, a canal flowed into the sea, and Juan completed his gruesome task before heading back home. On November 8, 2022, he left the house carrying a large backpack and went to a shopping center. There, he purchased various cleaning supplies, including a significant amount of chlorine. A surveillance camera captured him as he left the store. After returning home, Juan carefully cleaned the room, determined to erase all evidence and continue his life as if nothing had happened. 2 days later, on November 10, 2022, a group of fishermen were working at the beach port when they noticed a flock of birds circling over the shore. Curious, they approached the area and made a horrifying discovery. On the sand lay a head, a hand, and a body. Terrified, the fishermen immediately contacted the police. The police arrived at the scene, accompanied by representatives from the Prosecutor General's Office of Forensic Science. While examining the remains, they noticed something unusual: a ring on the victim's fingers. Investigators initially hypothesized that the woman had been killed elsewhere and her dismembered body had been moved to the beach. However, to confirm the identity of the victim, they needed to analyze the remains. The investigation soon hit a major obstacle. The victim's fingers had been mutilated, making it impossible to take fingerprints. This unusual detail led investigators to suspect that the victim might be a foreigner. During a press conference, Utah Police Chief Elvis Boss Billiards informed the media that the victim was believed to be a woman between 35 and 45 years old. Meanwhile, a rumor has emerged on social media that a Mexican tourist who visited Lima a few months ago has gone missing. As the investigation progressed, the national police linked the two cases. Unaware of the investigation's developments, Carla continued to locate her missing aunt, Blanca. On November 12, she once again appealed to the public for help. She accused Juan of being the main suspect in her aunt Blanca's disappearance, as he was the last person who had been with Blanca's in Peru. This accusation alarmed Juan, so he took defensive measures. Juan responded with a new story, filled with inconsistencies and untruths. He claimed that Blanca in Peru is homeless, and that he was merely helping her out of kindness. He denied having any romantic relationship with her. He even announced his intention to sue Blanca's family for defamation. Carla, however, firmly refuted all of his claims. From that point on, the two began a heated dispute on social media. Carla defended Blanca's reputation, while he tried to evade responsibility in every possible way. He then changed his profile picture and deleted all photos and other documents related to his relationship with Blanca. On November 13, the Mexican prosecutor's office announces it will travel to the United States to speed up the investigation, gather necessary information, and summon the suspect to court. By November 14, Juan had been officially identified as the primary suspect in Blanca's disappearance. During the interrogation, he said nothing and was uncooperative, leading investigators to search his home. His brother, Francisca, who is also his lawyer, is confused by his silence. But Francisca maintains that there is no romantic relationship between Juan and Blanca. That same day, Blanca's relatives contacted the police to share key information, reporting that Juan had personally gone to the airport to pick up Blanca when she arrives in Lima. The evidence continues to emerge, shedding light on the case. During analysis of the photos, investigators confirmed that the ring found on the beach belonged to Blanca. On November 15, during a search of Juan's home, more important evidence was found. Inside the house, investigators found 3 suitcases, a Mexican flag, women's clothing, and hair. Using fluorescent lighting, traces of blood were found in the bedroom, bathroom, shower, on the mattress, and in a vase. Based on this evidence, authorities requested Juan's temporary arrest. Subsequent DNA tests confirmed that the evidence found in the house undeniably belonged to Blanca. Blanca's family, including Alejandra and Carla, were devastated upon hearing the news. They went to Peru with the intention of testifying against Juan in court. Once there, they faced the heartbreaking task of identifying Blanca's clothing. Meanwhile, Juan has run away with his lover, Carmen. In 2022, the Peruvian Supreme Court issued a preliminary arrest warrant for Juan. However, authorities were shocked to discover that he had escaped. Their concern grew when they remembered that Juan had a twin brother, which could complicate the investigation. Despite this, authorities soon located him at Carmen's house, in San Juan de Lurigancho. He was immediately taken to the National Criminal Investigation Department in Lima and detained for 72 hours. During the interrogation, Juan maintained his innocence. He claimed that he was not present at the time of the murder, and asserting that his relationship with Blanca was purely an online friendship. At the hearing, he portrayed himself as a wrongfully accused man, expressed sympathy for Blanca's family, and urged the police to find the real perpetrators. On November 22, 2022, a hearing was held where it was requested that Juan be placed in custody. Prosecutor Marcus said it would be difficult to convince people of Juan's involvement in Blanca's murder. But he stressed that if Juan were released, he would likely try to escape again. The court approved the request, and Juan was sent to Carquin prison in Gua, where he was to remain for at least 9 months. Before the trial concluded, he filed an appeal. However, his lawyer did not attend the hearing. The judge rejected the appeal, stating that sufficient evidence had been gathered to prove Juan's involvement in the crimes and reminding him of his false testimony. During this time, Blanca's family tried their best to bring her body home in order to hold a funeral for her. Initially, this seemed impossible, as further testing on the remains might have been required as the investigation continued. Finally, in February 2023, Blanca's remains were sent to Mexico. Her family entrusted the remains to a funeral home for cremation and announced they would temporarily keep the ashes. After justice is served, they plan to take her ashes to the church so she can rest in peace forever. Meanwhile, Juan remained in prison awaiting his trial, scheduled for August 2023. During the trial, the prosecutor's office, the defense, and several witnesses presented testimony. The accused, Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte, was found guilty, and the court proceedings moved to the stage of delivering the verdict. On September 12, 2023, a virtual court session held by the Supreme Court of Lima announced the decision. Present at the session were Juan, who was in prison, his lawyer, Fernando, and one of Blanca's sisters. In his statement, the judge said that although the prosecutor's office accused Juan of organ trafficking, the complaint was dismissed due to lack of evidence. However, the judge confirmed that Juan had used his medical expertise to dismember Blanca's body. Additional evidence also revealed that her personal belongings, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, had been found in Juan's house. Thus, Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte was convicted of the murder of Blanca Arellano and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Furthermore, he was fined $1,000, payable to Blanca's family. After the verdict was announced, Carla, Blanca's niece, expressed her dissatisfaction. She argued that the 35-year sentence did not reflect the severity and cruelty of what Juan had done. She believes that such a sentence would allow rapists and murderers of women chance to reintegrate into society, something she finds unacceptable. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Samia Shahid, Chaudhry Muhammad Shahid, and Mityaz Shahid left their small village of Pandori in the Jhelum district of Punjab, Pakistan, in the mid-1980s to escape poverty and seek a better life. They immigrated to the UK, and in November 1987, their first child, Samia, was born in Bradford, West Yorkshire. A few years later, they welcomed their second child, a daughter named Mada. Shahid started a car rental business, which eventually grew to specialize in luxury vehicles, including limousines. As the business prospered, he helped 2 of his brothers and their families relocate from Pakistan to the UK. The Shahid family was well known and successful in Bradford, recognized for their wealth and influence. Shahid's brothers started and grew their businesses successfully. By the early 2000s, one brother owned a seafood shop chain, while the other ran a flower delivery and floristry business. Sisters Samia and Mata were born and raised in England, growing up in an interference of European and Pakistani cultures. However, their family strictly adheres to the traditions and laws of their homeland Pakistan. This created a sharp contrast between the liberal English lifestyle and the rigid rules imposed by their family. For instance, the girls were not permitted to drive, and their father closely monitored all their activities and interactions. The eldest daughter, Samia, was Shahid's pride and is considered Daddy's favorite daughter. He pampered her, buying her expensive clothes, jewelry, and let her study at the most prestigious university. She took great care of her appearance, using high-end cosmetics, go to beauty salons, and spend a lot of money there. Although she worked part-time at a post office, her lifestyle was primarily funded by her father, who fulfilled all her wishes. Secretly, Samia would sometimes rent a car and drive herself, as she loved driving and felt confident behind the wheel. She couldn't understand why Pakistani traditions restricted women from driving. Independent and strong-willed, she valued her freedom, but still made an effort to follow her parents' wishes and avoid upsetting them. Samia had many friends from university in England and stayed in touch with them. She was known for being bright, kind, and cheerful. Despite leading a life full of love and abundance, and seemingly having everything she could want, but she lacked the freedom to make her own decisions. She always acts according to the opinions of her parents and elder members of the family. Above all, she feared disappointing her father, whom she deeply admired. Yet, the strict rules, fears, and prohibitions in her life meant she could never truly be honest with her family. In 2012, Samia's parents decided it was time for she to marry, start a family, and have children. They insisted she travel to Pakistan to enter into a marriage that followed their cultural traditions. They chose her cousin, Shakil, as their son-in-law, a man she barely knew. Marriages between relatives and arranged unions are common in their culture. Samia had always known her parents would eventually select a husband for her, presenting it as a decision she could not refuse. She had resigned herself to this inevitability, but her father's choice left her deeply shocked. Samia found Shakil repulsive and could not imagine marrying him. To make matters worse, he had recently been released from prison after serving time for killing someone in a land dispute. Although Samia had interacted with him occasionally during childhood and had seen him as a brother figure, the idea of him as her husband was unthinkable. Her parents, who were also cousins in an arranged marriage, had fallen in love and built a happy life together. They believed the same would happen for Samia and Shakil, assuming love would grow over time. Despite her strong aversion to the match, Samia felt she couldn't defy her father and understood how much this marriage meant to her family. Her mother and younger sister Mata later asserted that no one forced her into the marriage. They thought that with her stubborn personality, they could not force her either physically or emotionally. According to them, she married willingly and of her own choice. In early February 2012, the decision about her upcoming wedding was finalized during a family meeting. In the weeks that followed, her parents, along with her aunt and uncle, who were also her future in-laws, took her shopping. She was able to choose anything she wanted: costly outfits, jewelry, accessories, cosmetics, and more, and they covered all the expenses. Outwardly, she feigned excitement of wedding preparations, but inwardly, she felt trapped. She already knew this marriage would not bring her happiness, but would instead feel like a punishment. Her true feelings could only be shared with her friends, not her family. At home, she had to maintain the appearance of joy, actively in discussing the wedding details, and prepare herself for her relocation to Pakistan. On February 20, 2012, Samia boarded a plane. She texted a close friend, telling her that she was about to fly thousands of miles to make the biggest mistake of her life, but she had no other choice. Later, she sent more messages, admitting that the very sight of the groom made her feel sick and that being near him was unbearable. On February 27th, Samia and Shaquille had a grand wedding at Pandori, attended by around 1,000 guests. The wedding lasted 4 days, and as a wedding gift, Samia's parents gave she and Shaquille a luxurious 2-story house located. However, Samia quickly realized that this beautiful house would feel like a prison, where she would be forced to live with a man she did not love. After returning to the United Kingdom, married life brought Samia no happiness. She still despised her husband, Shaquille, and knew she could never love him. 4 months later, in mid-June 2012, she went back to her hometown of Bradford to handle some matters and assist Shaquille with his immigration paperwork to apply for British citizenship. She planned to apply for a spousal visa for Shaquille, but she postponed it to enjoy the feeling of freedom and have some time away from a husband she did not love. When Samia began processing the documents, she discovered that their wedding ceremony, conducted in full accordance with Sharia law, was only considered a marriage contract between Muslims and held no legal validity in the United Kingdom. To make the marriage legally recognized, it was necessary to follow European legal procedures, such as having a civil ceremony and obtaining an official marriage certificate. After returning from Pakistan, Samia's friends noticed significant changes in her personality and behavior. She seemed sad, her eyes were dull, and she was no longer the cheerful, sociable person they knew. It was clear she felt deep resentment toward her parents. Any discussion about her husband or married life made her uncomfortable and angry. The root of the problem was Shaquille's extreme jealousy. Even from another country, he tormented Samia by constantly calling her and demanding video chats at any time. This allowed him to monitor her whereabouts, activities, and the people she was with. His behavior was not only a way to control her, but also a demonstration of his dominance and authority over her. In early August of that year, during a phone call with a close friend, Samia admitted that she was at her breaking point. She felt completely drained, had lost all joy and hope for happiness or a bright future, and no longer wanted to live. She expressed deep hatred for Shaquille, saying she never wanted to see him again. However, she couldn't share these feelings with her family because they were busy bragging to everyone about the lavish wedding they had prepared for her. In early September, unable to resolve issues related to the marriage visa, Samia was forced to return to Pakistan to live with the husband she disliked, Shaquille. She wrote frequently to friends, describing her misery, her distaste for her marriage, and her feeling of being trapped with no way out. This lasted for a few months, but then she started complaining less, and her mood gradually changed. During her next visit to the United Kingdom, the reason for this change became clear. Samia had met a young man online named Syed Mukhtar Kazim, a British citizen of Pakistani descent like herself. Syed was born and raised in London, but had been living and working in the United Arab Emirates for several years. The two began corresponding and quickly developed feelings for each other. They secretly meet, and in October 2013, they saw each other in person for the first time. Samia immediately realized that Syed was the man she wanted to spend her life with. He was kind, caring, attentive, and treated her with love and respect. They have many interests in common, but also understand the dangers in their relationship. Despite this, they felt that life only had meaning when they were together. Samia shared her situation with her beloved Syed and expressed her willingness to end her marriage to start a new life with him. However, she could not get a divorce in a British court because under local law, she was not recognized as married. In the spring of 2014, Samia decided to confront Shaquille and asked him for a divorce. He refused rudely, declaring that she would remain his until the end of her life. During another visit to the United Kingdom to see her parents, Samia secretly reached out to a local Islamic Sharia council, explaining that she had been forced into the marriage, which was grounds for annulment. She also converted from Sunni Islam to Shiite Islam, the religion Syed now practices. When the cleric from the council contacted Shakil to hear his perspective on their marriage, he once again refused to cooperate, angrily declaring that he would not consent to a divorce. Afterward, the Islamic Sharia Council of the United Kingdom annulled Samia's marriage, acknowledging that she had been forced into it due to family pressure. Her family was unaware that she had divorced Shakil and was planning to remarry, this time to the man she truly loved, Syed. In September 2014, Samia secretly married Syed. Unlike the previous marriage, this marriage was legally recognized, and they also received a marriage certificate to confirm its legality. The cleric who approved the annulment of her first marriage was also the one who presided over the nikah ceremony. Only a few close friends attended the intimate wedding. Samia and Syed was overjoyed. Samia confided in her friends that she felt like a princess in a fairy tale and could hardly believe her happiness was real. Sadly, this happy moment turned out to be the beginning of a nightmare and eventually led to exile. When her ex-husband, Shakil, demanded that she return to Pakistan, she informed him that she was no longer his wife and presented her new marriage certificate. Enraged, Shakil immediately contacted Samia's father, igniting a major family scandal. Her family tried to pressure her into returning to he, even resorting to threats, but she refused. This thing led to dire consequences. A few weeks later, while shopping with her younger sister, Samia was brutally attacked on the street. Her sister was left unharmed, but she was severely beaten with metal bars and narrowly avoided having her legs broken. Although police took her statement, but the identity of the attackers remained unknown, and the case was soon closed. At this time, Syed had to travel to Dubai for work, leaving his wife, Samia, in the United Kingdom, where she was waiting for a visa to join him. The waiting period was agonizing for her, filled with threats, conflicts with her relatives, and fears for her safety. Her parents tried to prove that her divorce from Shakil was valid, and even confronted the cleric who had officiated her marriage to Syed. Samia's mother was especially enraged, hurling insults at her daughter, accusing her of disgracing the family, and warning that she would face severe consequences. In the spring of 2015, Samia finally received her visa and was able to join Syed in Dubai. For her, it felt like an escape, as she feared her family would do everything in their power to prevent her from leaving and force her to return to Pakistan. To protect herself, she entrusted her passport to friends, who also purchased her plane ticket and accompanied her to the airport to ensure her safe departure. A new chapter of Samia's life began. The following year was the happiest of her life. She lives with Syed, the man she loves, who always cherishes and treats her with care. For the first time, she could drive a car, something her parents and former husband Shakil would never have allowed. In photos she shared on social media, she appeared radiant, confident, and more beautiful than ever. It was clear she was living the life she had always dreamed of. She hoped to become a mother soon, but unfortunately, that dream was not realized. Despite this, she and Syed remained optimistic about the future, planning their life together, unaware that her family had decided against her. Shortly after Samia left, her parents filed a missing persons report with the police, which they later attempted to reclassify as an abduction, accusing Syed of kidnapping her. Meanwhile, Shakil's family began plotting ways to force she to return. They realized that threatening her was no longer effective, but they still believed they could exploit her emotions and compassion to manipulate her. In June 2016, Samia received devastating news. Her aunt, Shakil's mother, had passed away. Heartbroken, Samia considered traveling to Pakistan for the funeral, but knew it could be dangerous. Many relatives still resent her for divorcing Shakil and remarrying Syed. Her actions were seen as treacherous and shameful. A week after the funeral, her mother called again with more distressing news. Her father's health had sharply declined. He was diabetic, and his condition had become critical. Samia feared that if he passed away, she could never forgive herself for not visiting him. Despite her own worries and Syed's dissuasion, she decides to go to Pakistan. Concerned for her safety, she promised her husband to stay in regular contact. On July 14, 2016, Samia arrived in Pakistan and stayed at a close friend's house. She left her passport and return ticket to Dubai with her friend, expressing her fear and insecurity and asking her friend to pray for her safe return to Syed. The first few days were relatively calm. She kept Syed and friend informed about her activities. She visited her aunt's grave with family and met several relatives. Her return flight to Dubai was scheduled for July 21. However, on July 20, Samia abruptly stopped all communication. On July 20, 2016, a heartbreaking incident occurred when Shahid contacted the police to report the death of his daughter, Samia. Upon arriving at the house where Samia had lived with Shakil, police found her lifeless body at the bottom of the stairs. Sadly, it was too late to save her. They found bruises on her body, which her parents attributed to her falling down the stairs. A small amount of pink foam was flowing from her mouth. Shahid speculated that she might have had a heart condition, causing her to fall and tumble down the stairs. Since no one was home at the time, she did not receive immediate help and passed away. When questioned about Shakil, Shahid explained that he was away on business. The police found no evidence of foul play at the scene and opted not to open a criminal investigation. An autopsy conducted the same day revealed no signs of violence, concluding that her death was due to natural causes. Samia was buried just a few hours after her death. Her sudden departure was not considered suspicious and was not investigated by the authorities, but it had a devastating impact on Syed. When Syed learned of his wife's, Samia's, sudden death from a heart attack, he was in shock and disbelief. According to media reports, she chose to end her life due to depression because she could not have children. However, her family rejected this version. They claimed that she passed out, then fell down the stairs and broke her neck. The investigation revealed bitter truths. Syed quickly flew to Pakistan on the earliest available flight and went directly to the police station, alleging that Samia had been killed by her relatives and Shakil. He detailed the forced marriage she had endured, her subsequent escape, and the threats she had received from her family. This testimony completely changed the development of the case, forcing the authorities to determine this was a criminal act. However, by this time, Samia had already been buried, and the official report still stated she had died of natural causes. Determined to seek justice, Syed turned to European law enforcement and the media, as Samia was a British citizen, to push for further investigation. Samia's father, Shahid, initially agreed to an interview, attempting to depict Syed as a fraud and extortionist. However, when Syed presented their marriage certificate, a medical report, and post-mortem photos of Samia, authorities launched an investigation. The report revealed bruises on Samia's neck and legs, along with traces of male seminal fluid, suggesting she had been in an intimate encounter shortly before her death. But with whom, given that Shakil allegedly wasn't home that day? Syed held a press conference, presenting extensive evidence, including text, voice, and video messages from Samia, where she repeatedly expressed fear for her life. It is believed that the police may have taken bribes, leading to the immediate arrest of Shahid and Shakil. Investigations revealed that they never intended to let Samia's return to Dubai. They forced her to go to the house given to her as a wedding gift, where they searched for her passport and tickets, which she had given to a friend to keep. In a fit of rage, Shakil physically restrained her. When she tried to escape, they caught up with her on the stairs. Shakil strangled her with her scarf, while Shahid held her legs, ensuring she had no chance to survive. Shakil later confessed to this crime at the police station, although Shahid denied any involvement in the killing of his own daughter. In addition to Shahid and Shakil, Samia's uncle, who received a fake report before the autopsy, and the police chief in charge of the initial investigation have both been arrested. In court, Shaquille retracted his confession, claiming it was made under coercion. He spent just over 2 years in prison before being released on bail in September 2018. In 2019, he remarried and again tried to move to the UK, but still without success. Samia's father, Shahid, was imprisoned from July to December 2016 and later released on bail. He died in January 2018 at the age of 52 due to deteriorating health. Before his death, he maintained his innocence and denied any involvement in his daughter's death. Samia's uncle and the commissioner were also released in the fall of 2016 without facing any penalties. Shortly afterwards, arrest warrants were issued in Pakistan for Samia's mother and younger sister, but they quickly returned to Bradford. Her younger sister, Mata, later gave a detailed interview, which accused her and Syed of being the cause of their family's breakdown, attempting to tarnish their reputations. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rocio Waninkoff. Hilaria Alicia Hornos was born on December 2, 1952, in the rural province of Jaén, Spain, specifically in the city of Arroyo de Lojanco. At the age of 24, she fell in love and married Willem Waninkoff, a Dutch citizen. They had 3 children, a son, Guillermo, followed by 2 daughters, Rosa and Rocio. However, as their family grew, so did the strain on their marriage. Willem suffered from alcoholism, which led to frequent absences from home and eventually led to his losing his job. Their arguments escalated, with Willem sometimes raising his voice at Alicia and becoming aggressive. To support her family, Alicia took a job as a maid at a hotel in Ibiza. During this difficult period, she met Dolores, who was the director of the hotel where she worked. Dolores Vasquez was the daughter of immigrants from Galicia. She is highly educated and polite, and a very interesting conversationalist. A strong friendship developed between Alicia and Dolores, which later developed into a romantic relationship. A year after starting her relationship with Dolores, Alicia decided to divorce Willem. He then returned to the Netherlands, and Alicia moved in with Dolores. Soon after, the couple bought a new house in Malaga. After the divorce, Alicia gained custody of all 3 children and raised them with Dolores. All 3 of Alicia's children loved Dolores, and the 5 of them lived together as a family. In 1988, Alicia and Dolores chose to end their romantic relationship, but continued to live together as friends until 1994. After 11 years, they parted ways, and Alicia began dating a man named Juan Charillo. She moved into a new place and embraced her new romantic life. With her children grown and her new partner by her side, life felt vibrant and full of love. On the morning of October 10, 1999, Alicia discovered that her daughter, Rocio, was missing. Initially, she wasn't alarmed, thinking Rocio might have spent the night at her boyfriend's house or a friend's place. However, as the day went on and Rocio still had not returned, Alicia grew worried. The family reached out to Rocio's friends and boyfriend, hoping to find out where she was, but no one had seen her. On the evening of October 9th, Rocio left home around 5:30 p.m. after saying goodbye to her mother and older sister, Rosa. She was headed to a fair in Fuengirola with her boyfriend, Antonio, and her friends. Rocio lived in the La Tierra neighborhood, which was very close to Antonio's house. She spent time at his place until 10:30 p.m. and planned to return home briefly to shower and change before heading to the fair. Unfortunately, she never arrived home. Although Alicia was worried about her daughter Rocio's disappearance, she chose to go for a walk with Juan instead of contacting the police immediately. While walking down the street, Alicia noticed a large blood stain on the road. She pointed it out to Juan, who initially didn't think much of it. However, as they got closer, Alicia noticed her daughter's sneakers lying there with drops of blood on them. Alicia was very panicked, and while walking, they also discovered a napkin and some blood on a vacant lot next to the path Rocio often walked. Alicia immediately called the police, and a missing person report was filed with a detailed description of Rocio. She had long hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a white Nike t-shirt and purple pants. Police quickly arrived at the scene where the blood was found, and forensic officers conducted a forensic examination of the crime scene to determine whose blood was on the road and sneakers. Initially, the investigation suggested that there had been an assault or fight that resulted in injuries. The trail showed several bloodstains, including long ones that looked like someone had moved quickly, possibly running. Eventually, the bloodstains disappeared, but the search team discovered a large trail that suggested significant blood loss. They also discovered bloody footprints. These led to tire tracks, where the bloodstains stopped. Next to the tire tracks, they found a cigarette butt from a brand that is not common in Spain. Forensic teams have collected all relevant samples to assist in the investigation, and it is hoped that DNA from these samples will help identify people who were at the scene. A detailed investigation was conducted, along with analysis of the blood found at the scene. Although the search for Rocio continues, police believe it is highly likely that Rocio was murdered. The blood trail began on the sidewalk and led to a large pool of blood, indicating significant blood loss that likely led to her death. Nearby, there were drag marks near the tire. This tire was identified from a small car, specifically a tire model that was discontinued in 1993. Since the drag marks extended over a steep area, it can be concluded that at least 2 people moved the body before a vehicle later arrived to remove the body. The search for Rocio continued, with volunteers scouring the area on foot and on motorbikes. Flyers with Rocio's picture were widely distributed, and news channels reported extensively on Rocio's disappearance. The family actively cooperated with journalists to get the word out about Rocio. Reporters from all television channels gathered outside Rocio Vaninkoff's home, hoping for her safe return. However, as time passed, the search yielded no clues. A few days after Rocio's disappearance, a local taxi driver came to the police station with vital information. He reported that on the night of Rocio's disappearance, around 10 p.m., he narrowly avoided a collision with an SUV traveling at high speed in the opposite lane near where Rocio's sneakers were found on the side of the road. As he passed the car, he also heard a loud scream. This evidence strongly suggested that Rocio had been abducted and murdered by an unknown assailant. DNA analysis later confirmed that the blood found on the road belonged to Rocio. The news left her family devastated, and the sense of loss quickly spread, affecting not only Rocio's loved ones, but the entire country of Spain. On November 2, 1999, 25 days after Rocio's disappearance, a disfigured body, believed to be Rocio's, was discovered near the Los Altos del Rodeo Athletic Club, between Marbella and San Pedro de Alcantara. The body was partially obscured by bushes and leaves, lying behind a fence separating a residential area from a nearby highway. The body was found on a narrow road that was difficult for cars to access. Rocio's body was found in another town. When police arrived, they found the body severely decomposed. During the collection of evidence, large black garbage bags containing Rocio's clothing were found. One of the bags had the number 8 painted on it, suggesting that the bags had been reused rather than purchased specifically for transporting the body. Police found clothing that they believed might belong to the missing Rocio. Her sister Rosa identified several rings, 2 t-shirts, and other items in 2 trash bags near the body as belonging to Rocio. The t-shirts had been torn from stab wounds. Rocio's body was then taken to the laboratory for forensic analysis, where experts worked carefully, applying their knowledge and skills. They faced a difficult task due to the severe decomposition of the body. Decomposition occurs much more quickly in rain and high temperatures, especially when there is humidity. The objective was to gather additional evidence to aid the investigation and understand how the attack happened. Several closed wounds were discovered, along with 8 stab wounds on the Rocio's back. Experts believe the attack was swift and violent, suggesting the Rocio was either restrained or unable to defend themselves. Fingerprints were found on plastic bags at the scene where the body was located. The police already had fingerprints and tire tracks from a vehicle, and they also collected 2 tissue samples from Rocio's body. At that stage, there was insufficient evidence to identify a specific suspect, but the investigation had gathered some information and leads. Public pressure had a significant impact on the investigation, prompting police to quickly search for evidence, but they were unable to. Because Rocio's body was so badly decomposed, they were unable to determine whether she had been sexually assaulted. Police speculated that the crime was motivated by personal vendetta and deep anger, suggesting that the attacker may have been an acquaintance or someone very close to Rocio. After collecting evidence, the police conducted further interviews. First, they questioned Rocio's boyfriend, Antonio Hurat, who was the last person to see her alive and was supposed to see her that night. He gave an alibi, saying he had fallen asleep at home and had not attended the fair that day. The police also questioned all of Rocio's relatives and friends, but each had a solid alibis. A year after Rocio Wanenkoff's death, the police had narrowed down the number of suspects, and by the end of that year, they had identified a prime suspect, Dolores Vasquez. There was no evidence against Dolores, but the media led people to believe that Dolores was guilty. Dolores was the lover of Alicia, Rocio's mother. Unfortunately, journalists distorted and even fabricated the story, claiming that Alicia had accused Dolores from the first day after Rocio's death. In reality, their relationship had ended 4 years before the crime. The investigation followed the media story, focusing only on Dolores and creating a motive in the case. People speculated that Rocio may have interfered with the romantic relationship between the two. Many believed that if Rocio had not intervened, Alicia would have returned to Dolores. It was implied that Dolores had acted out of revenge against Rocio. The media and public were quick to accuse Dolores of murder when she was arrested, although she did not confess to any of the crimes. The local community was certain of her guilt, largely because police suspected that the killer was someone close to Rocio. Family members described Dolores as aggressive, violent, and extremely jealous. Alicia, meanwhile, told reporters that Dolores was both vengeful and cruel. Dolores was widely criticized by the public. Her unconventional lifestyle was a target during the trial, as it was considered unusual in Spain. The media portrayed her as a violent and cold-blooded woman who had spent 4 years plotting her hate crimes. The trial attracted a large crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Journalists have widely reported that a close family friend has been charged with Rocio's murder. Dolores is unpopular and faces an uphill battle in court. Public opinion matters in this case. Rumors and sensational media reports are likely to sway the jury's opinion. Virtually every television station has portrayed Dolores Vasquez as responsible for Rocio's death. In reality, there was no evidence against Dolores. However, it seemed that the justice system felt the need to convict someone and chose her as a scapegoat due to her questionable alibi and various flaws. Dolores was not present at the crime scene. The tire tracks did not match her car, the fabric fibers found did not come from her clothes, and the fingerprints on the trash bags did not belong to her. She also had an alibi, stating that she was babysitting her sick mother and her young niece that day, but this was ignored. Over 50 witnesses were called to testify in court. Dolores only took the stand once and stated that she did not kill Rocio and that she did not even see her that day. She asked all of Spain to find the real culprit because it was not her, and that person could have been in the courtroom at the time. She stated that there was no evidence against her and never would be because she was innocent. It is noted that the judicial system in Spain is often criticized for being inadequate and often bending the law. Prosecutors and police in Spain focus on prioritizing their theories over justice, showing a complete disregard for the legal process. The police report highlighted circumstantial evidence linking Dolores to the crime and included a psychological profile of her, as there was no physical evidence. Ultimately, the jury found Dolores Vázquez guilty of murder, resulting in a 16-year prison sentence. The verdict was met with public celebration. Rocio's funeral drew a large crowd. During this time, the Rocio family and the local community felt a growing sense of fear. This atmosphere of fear was amplified by the numerous television programs that covered the case. After Dolores's arrest, the Rocio family appeared on various programs, sharing past stories that described Dolores as cold, unfriendly, demanding, and cruel. It took years and another similar crime to reveal that Rocio Waninkoff was not killed by Dolores Vázquez. On the morning of August 15, 2003, the parents of 17-year-old Sonia Carabantes reported her missing to the police. Sonia's friends said they had dropped Sonia off at her home, but she was not there. A short distance from her home, near a tree, her parents discovered her shoes, purse, and cell phone, along with traces of blood on nearby cars. The police quickly began searching for and investigating Sonia's case. As time went on, the family's despair deepened. They searched the neighborhood, but the bloodstains on Sonia's clothes left little hope that she would be returned safely. A key piece of evidence in Sonia's case was the car's headlights. The police contacted all local auto repair shops to find a car with a broken headlight matching the description. At the same time, the police found many similarities between Rocio's and Sonia's cases. Both girls had disappeared during the fair. All employees working at the fairs in Coin and Matril were investigated, as was the case with Rocio. Flyers with Sonia's picture were widely distributed, and many people actively participated in the search for her. They not only volunteered their time, but also provided any assistance needed to help the police. Police continued their investigation. However, on the 5th day after Sonia went missing, search dogs led them to Sonia's body, which was hidden in a creek under a pile of rocks. Heavy rains the night before had washed away any evidence that could help identify her attacker. On the day of her disappearance, Sonia had been at a fair in Coin. She had said goodbye to her friends near her home, where she was then attacked. Her attacker struck her multiple times, leaving her unconscious and defenseless due to the sudden and violent nature of the attack. The attacker then abducted her by car to a remote area away from her home. Sonia suffered both internal and external injuries before being strangled, ultimately resulting in her death. Sonia was found quickly, allowing police to gather and analyze crucial evidence from her body. Colonel Paca Gabella announced that significant evidence was discovered, including biological material. This was analyzed and added to the police forensic DNA database, leading to matches with genetic material found on a cigarette butt from the Rocio Waninkoff case. When comparing the two DNA samples, they were identical. This revealed that the man who killed Rocio in 1999 was the same individual who attacked Sonia. This suggests that Dolores Vázquez, who was wrongly convicted, while the real killer is still at large, took the life of another young girl. The evidence is clear: an English cigarette butt from Rocio's case and the skin particles found under Sonia's fingernails, all linked to the same offender. On September 18, Cecilia Pantoja, a young woman, contacted the police with suspicions about her ex-husband after seeing blood on his t-shirt just days after Sonia's body was found. Cecilia also mentioned that her ex-husband was away from home twice, driving somewhere on the day of the attack on Rocio. With the help of DNA testing and Cecilia's testimony, the police were able to identify the real killer of both Rocio and Sonia as Tony Alexander King. Tony's criminal activities began as a teenager in the Holloway area of North London. In 1985, the area was hit by a series of violent attacks on women, where victims were strangled and assaulted. At the time, Tony went by his birth name, Anthony Bramwitt, then 19, was convicted of strangling 5 women until they were unconscious, using a rope or cable, and then assaulting them. The judge sentenced Tony to 10 years in prison, calling him a monster for his actions. Tony served only half of his sentence and was released in 1991, but he returned to prison shortly afterwards for robbing a woman and threatening her with a knife. He changed his name to Tony Alexander King in search of a new life, married Cecilia Pantoja, and tried to have a normal family life. They had a daughter together, but Tony soon returned to his old ways. A month after Sonia's death, he was arrested. During questioning, Tony admitted to killing 2 innocent girls. After his arrest, he recounted that he followed Rocio as she walked home from her boyfriend's house and threatened her with a knife when she tried to escape. Rocio was attacked with a knife in the neck, and Tony then stabbed her 9 times. In 2005, Tony Alexander King was sentenced to 36 years in prison for kidnapping, assault, and murder of Sonia. The court also ordered Tony to pay her family about $350,000. Tony was also sentenced to 7 years in prison for intentionally causing violence against a woman in Malaga in 2001. The following year, Tony was convicted of Rocio's murder and received an additional 19-year sentence. Before the trial, Tony wrote to Sonia and Rocio's mother, begging for their forgiveness. He is currently serving his sentence at Herrera de la Mana Maximum Security Prison in Ciudad Real, Spain. After the case was over, a huge scandal broke out in Spain because the innocent Dolores Vázquez was wrongly convicted of the murder of Rocio Waninkoff. It is hard to accept that not only can the police and the courts unfairly punish innocent people, but society can also judge and degrade them harshly. Even when a person can prove their innocence, they are still not recognized. It took more than a year to confirm that Dolores Vázquez was telling the truth and that she was completely innocent. In 2008, the Spanish Ministry of Justice offered Dolores Vázquez 120,000 euros in compensation, significantly less than the 4 million euros she had originally requested. Despite her wrongful conviction, Dolores never received an apology from the police. After being released from prison, Dolores returned to the UK. Now, more than 20 years later, Dolores has yet to receive an apology for her conviction, nor has she received any compensation since her case was closed in 2014. She works for a transport company in East London and has undergone a psychological assessment following her traumatic experience. She recently said she is still waiting for an apology after suffering from anxiety for years, which has made it difficult for her to communicate with others. The case of Dolores Vázquez, who was wrongfully imprisoned, is considered one of the most serious miscarriages of justice in Spain since 1910.